Chapter 598. Little Imo didn't understand the significance of the small sword being stimulated, but I was happy for him. I smiled and said to him, "This is a good thing. Your small sword will become very big and powerful in the future. When the small sword grows bigger, you can avenge your parent." Hearing me mention his parents, little Imo's expression changed. He stopped smiling and looked at me seriously for a while. He asked, "Uncle, when will my small sword grow big?" 60 years was too general. Even if the small sword was stimulated this time, I didn't know when the sword embryo would grow into a sword spirit. Looking at little Imo's serious gaze, I thought for a while and replied, "When you grow up, the small sword will grow up too." After saying that, I thought Imo would ask more questions. Unexpectedly, he nodded thoughtfully and didn't say anything else. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the riverside and closed his eyes to meditate. An innate sword embryo didn't need to meditate and practice. Once the sword embryo in the body became a sword spirit, it could condense the yang spirit. However, no matter how magical the innate sword embryo's aptitude was, people with such aptitude were essentially cultivators. As cultivators, if they didn't experience the gradual transformation from weak to strong, their foundation wouldn't be stable even if they could reach the sky in one step. Their achievements would still be limited. Moreover, no matter what method was used to condense the yang spirit, a body that could withstand the yang spirit was required. Otherwise, the body wouldn't be able to withstand the power of the yang spirit, and it would all be for naught. Looking at little Imo's actions, my eyes flashed with admiration. I didn't disturb him and returned to the Taoist palace. After returning, I thought about the reason why the sword embryo in little Imo's body had been stimulated. First, I eliminated the possibility of the sword nurturing technique. This technique was old Taoist Huang Zhu's cultivation technique. They had depended on each other for many years. If the sword nurturing technique had affected the sword embryo in little Imo's body, old Taoist Huang Zhu would have noticed long ago. It couldn't be because of me. I had nothing to do with sword cultivation. Even with my mysterious identity in my previous life, I hadn't found any connection with sword cultivation. If it wasn't because of the sword nurturing technique or me, then the only possibility was the Xianyuan sword. I cultivate the sword nurturing art with the Xianyuan sword as the foundation. When I cultivate, the Xianyuan sword's aura will naturally spread out. When the Xianyuan sword had first seen the light of day, little Imo had absorbed the sword qi to increase his cultivation. The Xianyuan sword had indeed affected the sword embryo in his body. It's a pity that the Xianyuan sword is already in my body. Otherwise, I can let little Imo hold it for the time being and nourish it day and night. The only thing he could do now was to let little Imo cultivate beside him while he practiced the sword nurturing technique every day and see how the situation developed. After making my decision, I quickly closed the curtains and went to sleep. On the second day of the All-Heaven competition, the Wanwu Grotto Heaven will be participating, so I'll most likely have to participate. I'll rest well tonight so that I can prepare for tomorrow. Nothing happened that night. The next morning, when I opened my eyes, I saw little Imo sleeping beside my bed. Seeing that he was sleeping soundly, I didn't wake him up. I quietly woke up the fatty and brought him out of the Taoist palace, heading towards the celestial temple peak where the heavenly grand ritual would be held. After a short while, we arrived at the place. The heavenly grand ritual would be held 24 hours a day. However, because it was still early and the All-Heaven competition hadn't started yet, the people from the Grotto Heavens and Blessed Lands hadn't arrived yet, so the arena was deserted. I saw Wang Ken from afar. He was standing below the arena, directing the servants of the Wang family to prepare for today's competition. Seeing my arrival, Wang Ken came to greet me from afar. After bowing to me, he asked, "Sage, why are you here so early?" As I walked towards the arena, I answered, "Yesterday's competition was very exciting. Even the strength of the families from the Blessed Lands was very good. Today, we'll be fighting on the arena, so I came here early to discuss today's battle with you." Hearing me say that, Wang Can's face turned gloomy. He sighed and said, "Yes, what the sage said is right. Yesterday's competition was an eye-opener for me. The strength of the families seemed to have improved compared to the previous years." Although he didn't say it directly, from his expression, it was obvious that he was pessimistic. He felt that the strength of the other families had improved, and only Wangu Grotto Heaven's strength had declined. At such a young age, he had to worry about the affairs of the entire family. It was impossible for Wang Can not be pessimistic. I walked to the side of the arena and sat down on the seat that belonged to Wangu Grotto Heaven. I comforted him with a smile. "Don't be too discouraged. Everything in the world has ups and downs. A low tide doesn't mean anything. Moreover, we haven't competed with the other families yet. Why do we have to weaken ourselves first?" Wang Can twitched his mouth stiffly and squeezed out a smile. He said to me perfunctorily, "What the sage said is true." Compared to him, I was much more confident. I advised him again, "Actually, our strength isn't that bad. I don't dare to say that I can defeat everyone within the ceiling heavenly masters, but at the very least, no one will be able to take advantage of me. Fatty and Ah Fu's strength is also quite good. Even if we can't get the first place, we can at least keep our position in the top 10 Grotto Heavens." Wang Can sighed again. "Even if we can keep our position in the top 10, once we give up the first place, the other Grotto Heavens will inevitably look down on us. Judging from the hostility shown by Schwanda Grotto Heaven, I'm afraid there will be more disasters in the next 10 years. I furrowed my eyebrows. It was true that Wang Can was worried, but he was always thinking about the worst. It didn't help the current situation at all. I shook my head and said to Wang Can in a more serious tone, "I don't think so. We still have a big chance to keep the first place. Don't you trust me?" Hearing my serious tone, Wang Can finally came to his senses. He hurriedly said, "Of course, I believe in the sage. However, the other family's contestants are also very strong. The competition is best of 3. Even if the sage can defeat all the contestants, it's hard to say who will win the remaining 2 matches." This time, before I could say anything, the fatty next to me was unhappy. He glared at me and said, "What? Wang Can, you don't trust me?" These 2 people didn't get along with each other. I thought they would quarrel again. Unexpectedly, Wang Can cupped his hands at the fatty and said, "Of course, it's not that I don't trust you, Brother Lin. It's just that the other families are too powerful, and I'm under a lot of pressure. That's why I spoke carelessly. Please don't blame me. By the way, Brother Lin, I still need your help with the Wang family's participation in the competition." Wang Can's tone softened, and the fatty was a little embarrassed. He waved his hand and said, "No need to thank me. What's the relationship between me and third baby? Helping you is helping him. You don't need to be polite with me." After they chatted for a while, I interrupted them and said to Wang Can, "Let's not talk about winning or losing. Let's talk about today's opponent. Who are our opponents today?" When we talked about the specific matters, Wang Can calmed down a little and answered, "Today's opponents, according to the order, should be the 18th and 19th winners of yesterday's matches, which are the Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land. In yesterday's match, the Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land defeated the Kingi Wanshan Blessed Land with a great advantage. According to Ah Fu, the Yang God Celestial Master of the Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land is at least at the middle stage of the Yang God realm. As for the Seal Celestial Master and the Knowledge Glory Earth Master, they didn't see anything because they had a great advantage yesterday." The word Tsin originally referred to a small but high mountain. The Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land was actually Mount Tianmu. Li Bai once described it in his poem, "The celestial heavenly blessed land stretches across the sky, and its power covers the entire Red City." In reality, Mount Tianmu wasn't as majestic as Li Bai had described. However, since it could attract the attention of the immortal poet, it must have its spiritual energy and beautiful scenery. It could be considered a strong opponent. After listening to Wang Can's description, I vaguely remembered the battle between the Tsin heavenly blessed land and the Kingi Wanshan blessed land yesterday. Just as Wang Can had said, the Tsin heavenly blessed land had a great advantage. However, because of the difference in their cultivation base, I focused most of my attention on the Seal Celestial Master. Yesterday, although the Celestial Master of Mount Tianmu was powerful, his strength was only at the late stage of the Celestial Master realm. In my opinion, he wasn't a worthy opponent. Of course, this was only based on yesterday's performance. If he wanted to hide his strength, I couldn't see anything from his appearance. I smiled at Wang Can and said, "This is just the first match. I watched the battle between the Tsin heavenly blessed land yesterday. Their strength is just average. It shouldn't be difficult for them to win. You shouldn't belittle yourself." After hearing my affirmation, Wang Can heaved a sigh of relief. While we were talking, the people from the other blessed enclaves gradually arrived. When we finished talking, most of the people from the blessed enclaves had gathered. Wang Can got up and went to work, while I looked around. As soon as I looked up, I heard a dull voice behind me. "Brother Zhou, how have you been?" Chapter 599. The person standing behind me was a short and thin old man. He looked unfamiliar, so I didn't recognize him at first. Just as I was about to ask him, I suddenly remembered what had happened in the orchard's cellar when I was investigating Yu Fuda's case in Shenzhen. Only then did I recognize that the sickly white-haired old man in front of me was the celestial master of the Han family who had almost killed me. He was also the fourth uncle that Han Wennan had mentioned. Back then, he had tried to kill me, so he was naturally my enemy. However, with my relationship with Han Wennan, I didn't have much anger towards the Han family. I just looked at him and said coldly, "I and Han Wennan are of the same generation. Calling me fourth uncle is too much for me." Han family's celestial master coughed and smiled. "We cultivators only interact based on our cultivation. Brother Zhou, you are a celestial master now. Although I am a few years older, I do not dare to be arrogant." Back then, he did not even bother to explain himself in front of me. He had wanted to kill me right away. Today, he had a smile on his face and his words showed that he was trying to please me. I pouted. It was just as I thought. As long as one had sufficient cultivation, one would be able to gain respect from others. Seeing that I did not speak, Han family's celestial master continued, "Back then in Shenzhen, I had no choice due to the war of witchcraft. I hope that Brother Zhou does not blame me for what happened back then." I did not care about what happened back then and did not want to talk to him about it. I shook my head. I have long forgotten what happened back then. May I know why Brother Han is looking for me today? Han family's celestial master heaved a sigh of relief. He smiled. "Brother Zhou is really an open-minded gentleman. Forget it. Let's not talk about what happened back then. I came to look for Brother Zhou mainly because someone asked me to invite Brother Zhou to meet an old friend of mine at my temporary residence in the West City Grotto Heaven after the arena competition." West City Grotto Heaven? Old friend? I frowned and kept silent for a while. Then, I asked, "The West City Grotto Heaven that Brother Han mentioned, is it the Chuanjian Holy Land, Taishan Total Truth Grotto Heaven?" "That's right." The Han clan's celestial master nodded with a hint of pride on his face. The Han clan originated from the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven. We are a branch of the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven in the mortal world. After saying that, he seemed to be a little emotional and said, "Back then, I didn't have enough talent, so I left the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven and came to the secular world. I thought that I would spend the rest of my life in the Han family, but I never thought that I would be blessed and return to the ancestral land." I was not interested in his situation. His last remark was the only thing on my mind. The Han family was born in the West City Mountain Grotto, which was ranked third among the 10 great grottos. Not to mention that Wangu Grotto was in trouble now. Even at its peak, the West City Mountain Grotto was not much weaker than Wangu Grotto. As a member of the West City Mountain Grotto, there was no need for the celestial master of the Han family to humble himself in front of me. Seeing that I was confused, the Han clan's celestial master had no intention of explaining. After sighing with emotion, he cupped his hands and said with a smile, "I have conveyed the message. Brother Zhou, please come to the appointment. I will leave now." After saying that, he got up and was about to leave. However, after taking 2 steps, he seemed to remember something. He turned his head and said to me, "Brother Zhou, that year in Shenzhen, that young god, what happened to him?" "Young god?" He must be talking about Yin Nantian. I looked at him and said calmly, "Since I'm still alive, the young god is naturally dead." I said it calmly, but the Han clan's celestial master's pupils shrank slightly. He cupped his hands at me again and finally turned to leave. After he left, I sat on the chair and started to think. When he mentioned an old friend, my first thought was Han Wennan. However, when Han Wennan entered the blood sacrifice well, according to Lu Zhenyang, he was the only one who came out. Moreover, even if Han Wennan came out alive, the Han clan's celestial master was his 4th uncle. How could he help him and pass on his message? However, if it weren't for Han Wennan, I wouldn't have any so-called old friends in the Han clan in Qinling Mountains or in this Dongtian in Xiqing City. What the hell is going on? Is there some kind of conspiracy in this Dongtian? As soon as I thought about it, I shook my head and denied it. With the power of the Dongtian in Xiqing City, if they really wanted to kill me, they wouldn't need any conspiracy. In the top 10 heavens, no matter which family it belonged to, they were extremely powerful. Even the declining Wangu Grotto heaven was guarded by Wang Can's 2 granduncles. In their eyes, the current me is just an ant. While I was thinking, Wang Can came back from afar. He must have seen the Han clan's celestial master come to talk to me. He cupped his hands and asked, "Sage, was that man from Xiqing City?" I nodded and briefly told him what had happened. Wang Can looked surprised. "Sage, you have an old friend in the Dongtian in Xiqing City?" I shook my head. I don't know who he was talking about, but since he told me, I'll go there and have a look. I'll know when I get there. Wang Can thought for a while and nodded. "I'll go with you tonight." There was a protective formation in Wangu Grotto Heaven that only Wang Can could use. With him, I would be safe. I hesitated for a while, then nodded and agreed. After we talked about it, the second round of the All-Heaven competition officially began in the arena. The rules were still the same. So, Wanwu Grotto Heaven would be the first to fight. Since the top 10 heavens would also participate in the competition today, the rules were changed to only one fight at a time. Old Fu had been waiting for me for a long time. I stood up from the chair and called Fatty and Old Fu to join me. Then, I walked to the arena. Our opponents were the Heavenly Grandmother Tsun Blessed Land, whom Wang Can had discussed with me today. They were still the same 3 people who had fought yesterday. They were divided into 3 small areas. After cupping their fists to greet each other, they started to fight. Fatty didn't have much fighting experience. Although he was excited, he was very careful when he came up. He started with a simple defensive formation that was easy to set up. Then, without looking at his opponent, he continued to set up a more complicated defensive formation. He didn't take the initiative to attack. On the other hand, Fu's side was much more radical. Not long after, they each took out their yang spirits and used them to fight. Every move was extremely dangerous. I was the one who had the easiest time. I was going to use the dismantling armor sword, but when the Seal Heavenly Master attacked, I found that his power was only at the late stage of the Heaven Master realm, which was the same as yesterday. He didn't have any hidden skills. So, I didn't use the dismantling armor sword. I just used some simple magic arts to fight with him. At that moment, my cultivation base was at the middle stage of the Heaven Master realm. Coupled with my dual witchcraft cultivation, my power wasn't weaker than my opponent. After shaking for a while, we were evenly matched. After thoroughly understanding my opponent's power, I didn't want to delay any longer. I directly took out my Heavenly Master Seal, forcing my opponent to take out his seal as well. My Heavenly Master Seal had 4 characters. Since I had dual witchcraft cultivation, its size wasn't inferior to my opponent's, and its purity was even better. After taking it out, I didn't hesitate to control the seal above my opponent's head to suppress it. The Heavenly Grandmother's and Blessed Land's seal Heavenly Master seemed to have been provoked. His eyes flashed with ferocity. He didn't dodge, but controlled his seal to face the attack. The 2 huge Celestial Master Seals collided with each other and let out a dull rumble. After the collision, my Heavenly Master Seal remained where it was, while my opponent's Heavenly Master Seal was obviously damaged. A bright yellow air current floated out from it, and the seal shrunk visibly. It wailed as it returned to Heavenly Grandmother's head, and shrunk back into Baihui. The Heavenly Master Seal contained pure yang energy, which was the foundation of the seal. The person's seal's pure yang energy had dissipated, and his years of cultivation had vanished into thin air. There was no need for me to do anything. His eyes were filled with fear, and he immediately admitted defeat. After he said that, he hurriedly jumped off the arena, as if he was afraid that I would chase after him again. After I won, the spectators below the stage all cried out in surprise at the same time. When I took out the seal just now, although I had tried my best to conceal it, when the 2 seals collided, the concealed aura dissipated quite a bit. Although the specific contents of the seal were not exposed, many people could see that there were a total of 4 words on my Celestial Master Seal. That was why they gasped in surprise. In actual fact, the characters on the seal weren't much of a secret. After I won, I walked off the arena, but I wasn't in a hurry to return. Instead, I stood below the arena and lifted my head to look at the fatty and Fu. At this moment, Fu's side had already obtained victory. Contrary to what Wang Can had expected, Fu was extremely ferocious from the start. He didn't even hesitate to use the pure yang liquid in his yang god spirit, and fought with his life on the line. After me, he quickly forced his opponent to surrender. It was just that he had expended a lot more energy than I had, but with the 4 true dragon veins in Wanwu Grotto Heaven, it wasn't too difficult for him to recover. Fu and I had both won. Wanwu Grotto Heaven had safely passed this round. It wasn't important whether the fatty won or not. However, the fatty obviously didn't care about this. At this moment, his battle hadn't ended. It wasn't that he wasn't strong enough. In actual fact, the disparity in power between him and my side was even greater. The simple defensive formation that the fatty had set up at the start hadn't been broken even after he had set up an extremely complicated and powerful defensive formation. When the young Earth Master from Heavenly Grandmother's and Blessed Land finally broke through the simple defensive formation on the outermost layer, he raised his head and saw a defensive formation that was much thicker and heavier than the previous one. He almost collapsed. However, this youth had perseverance. He clenched his teeth and didn't admit defeat, starting a battle that was like an ant trying to shake a tree. The fatty was really wretched. He hid behind the defensive formation and giggled as he watched the commotion. He didn't make a move. This battle finally ended with Earth Master's and Blessed Land fainting from exhaustion. After it ended, the fatty casually stood up and retracted the defensive formation. He chuckled at the crowd below the arena before walking over to my side. Chapter 600. After winning the first match, Officer Wang seemed to be more confident, and his complexion looked better. Then, the second and third matches took place. I had thought that the first match had a great disparity in strength, but compared to the first match, the following matches were completely one-sided. Many of the blessed lands that were ranked at the bottom of the rankings didn't fight at all, even though they had fought fiercely the day before. Instead, they chose to admit defeat. This showed how famous the 10 great paradises were. When it came to the third match, I paid special attention to the West Mountain Grotto Heaven. However, I didn't know any of the 3 people who had fought, let alone Han Wen-nan. After the third match, according to the order, the 4th Grotto Heaven should have fought against the blessed land that was ranked 15th out of the 72 blessed lands. However, the strange thing was that the fight didn't take place in the arena. Instead, the 4th Grotto Heaven, which was the West Mysterious Mountain Grotto Heaven, was announced as the winner. Then, the 5th match began. I was puzzled, so I turned to ask Officer Wang, "What's going on?" Officer Wang seemed to know what was going on. His expression was complicated. After a moment of silence, he said with a wry smile, "Sage, do you remember that when I talked about my father's cultivation, I mentioned that there was someone in the blessed lands who was as strong as my father?" I immediately understood, and asked in surprise, "There was someone in the Shiju realm in the West Mysterious Mountain Grotto Heaven?" Officer Wang nodded and said, "To be exact, there was someone in the same realm as my father before he passed away, half a step into the Shiju realm. My Wang family didn't have many people, and in my generation, I only had one heir. Every time I participated in the all-heaven competition, it was difficult to gather 3 people. However, when my father was alive, our Wang family didn't need to participate in the all-heaven competition. Because my father was alive, our Wang family would always be number 1, and no one could take it away from us. If the all-heaven competition was the rule of the blessed lands, then the Wang family was above the rule." As he spoke, Officer Wang became excited, and his face showed a strong sense of pride. It was obvious that the completely different circumstances before and after his father's death made him feel very uneasy. After a while, Wang Can calmed down and continued, "Now that my father has passed away, the Wang family can no longer stand above the rules. However, Xixian Mountain is different. Their ancestor, who was half a step into the Dawn realm, is still here. Hence, Xixian Mountain is still above the rules. However, it's also fortunate that Xixian Mountain's Grotto Heaven has always been mysterious. No one knows where it is. Normally, it doesn't participate in the other matters of the Grotto Heaven. It doesn't even care about the ranking that the other Grotto Heavens and Blessed Lands are fighting for. Otherwise, if they wanted to take first place, they wouldn't even need to participate in the All-Heaven competition. Our Wang clan would have to hand it over. Over the past few days, the strength of these families in the Blessed Enclave has left a deep impression on me. However, even such a powerful blessed enclave could only kneel in front of a powerful being half a step into the Dawn realm, not daring to speak. As early as when I was in the royal tomb of the Shang dynasty, I heard that above the Yang spirit, there was the Yang spirit ascension, the Dawn realm, and so on. However, I didn't have any direct understanding of these legendary realms. Now, from Officer Wang's words, I finally realize how powerful these realms are. They are so powerful that even if the entire blessed enclave united, no one would dare to disobey their will. Until now, I still don't know where the end of cultivation is. However, since I have to ascend after the Dawn realm, that must be the end. When I was in the Fire God Temple, the silver-eyed man said that I had to reach the Heaven Ascension realm before I could change the way of heaven. The Dawn realm is probably the Heaven Ascension realm he mentioned. As he thought about this, the 4th match continued in the arena. The Mang Mountain Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 5th among the 10 major Grotto Heavens, was fighting against the Spirit Void Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 14th among the 72 blessed lands. It was still a battle of overwhelming strength. However, the Spirit Void Grotto Heaven did not directly admit defeat. It was only after the fight that they admitted defeat. In addition to their resistance, my attention was mainly focused on the Celestial Master of Seal sent by the Mang Mountain Grotto Heaven. This Celestial Master of Seal was Zhang Kunlun, who had left a deep impression on me in the Metaphysics Association. I haven't seen him for many years, but Zhang Kunlun is still a smiling little fatty. I can't see the temperament of an expert from him. When he walked into the arena, he glanced at me and nodded at me with a smile, greeting me. I've always had an indescribable fear of this person. Back in the Metaphysics Association, whether it was Han Wennan or Lu Zhenyang, they were much more famous than Zhang Kunlun. However, I don't know why, but the one who left the strongest impression on me is always this seemingly harmless little fatty. With the great disparity in strength, the Mang Mountain Grotto Heaven easily won. Next, the Luofu Mountain Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 6th, also won easily. When it was time for the Red City Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 7th, to fight, I met another acquaintance. Chun Yadong's Golden Court Mountain Grotto Heaven fought this round. From the first round, I can see that Chun Yadong, who was in the Metaphysics Association with me, performed very well. However, in the end, Golden Court Mountain is just a small blessed land. The difference in strength between it and the powerful Grotto Heaven clans is too great. After the Red City Grotto Heaven, the other clans of the 10 Great Grotto Heavens did not encounter any resistance, and the competition ended quickly. The result was naturally completely one-sided. The 10 Great Grotto Heavens did not lose a single round, and all of them won. This is very normal, so no one paid attention to it. Soon, starting from the Schwanda Grotto Heaven, the remaining competitions continued. The clans of the 36 small Grotto Heavens were represented by the Schwanda Grotto Heaven, and they were also very powerful. At the beginning of this round, Zhao Hao personally fought and led the Schwanda Grotto Heaven to an easy victory. However, when it came to the Changshan Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 2nd, the situation became strange. Changshan Grotto Heaven is another name for Gubei Yuzheng Mountain. As it is ranked 2nd among the 36 small Grotto Heavens, it naturally has its extraordinary points. However, according to Officer Wang, there seems to have been some kind of disaster in this Changshan Grotto Heaven recently, causing its strength to plummet. The Blessed Land clans they met in the first round were too weak, so they could barely win. However, in this round the result was hard to say. According to the ranking, they will be fighting Lu Liang's Blessed Land, which is ranked 7th among the 72 Blessed Lands. It is also the force represented by Corpse Insek's elder, Lin Shui. If it was just an unfamiliar Changshan Grotto Heaven, I naturally wouldn't care, but with Lin Shui's participation, I couldn't help but pay attention. It's different from the previous round. Judging from Lin Shui's position in this round, she is actually participating as a Seal Heavenly Master. It's impossible for her to suddenly make a breakthrough in just one night. The reason why she is participating as a Heavenly Master is that she has brought along the Purple Chun Corpse that she controlled. The Purple Chun Corpse has the cultivation base of a Heavenly Master. Back in the Corpse Insect, Lin Shui relied on it to obtain the position of an elder. During the time I was lurking in the Corpse Insect, I saw many corpses, but the one that left the deepest impression on me was Lin Shui's Purple Chun Corpse. At that time, I suspected that the Purple Chun Corpse could sense the true power of the sacrificial evil spirit. Later, when the Corpse Insect changed, the speed at which the Purple Chun Corpse escaped with Lin Shui also left a deep impression on me. Of course, this is only an indirect feeling that the Purple Chun Corpse gave me. I'm not very clear about its true strength. However, from the fact that Lu Liang's Blessed Land allowed Lin Shui to bring the Purple Chun Corpse to participate in the Seal Heavenly Master battle, it seems that the Purple Chun Corpse's combat power is also very strong. Among the 3 people from Lu Liang's Blessed Land, besides Lin Shui, the other 2 are middle-aged men. What's strange is that the 2 middle-aged men each have a corpse next to them. Corpse-controlling techniques aren't a secret in the metaphysics world, but compared to other Taoist techniques, it's much rarer. It seems that this Lu Liang's Blessed Land is a clan that specializes in corpse refining and corpse raising techniques in the 72 Blessed Lands. If that's the case, it's no wonder that Lin Shui would suddenly appear here after the corpse insect was destroyed. As the three people from Lu Liang's blessed land appeared on the arena, on the other side, three people from Changshan Grotto Heaven also walked out and jumped onto the arena. But when I saw the three people, I immediately frowned. The people that Changshan Grotto Heaven sent out also had a corpse behind them. Could it be that this Changshan Grotto Heaven is the same as Lu Liang's blessed land, a clan that specializes in corpse raising? Chapter 601. The corpse raising technique wasn't a secret in the metaphysics world, but the appearance of two corpse raising clans was a bit strange. Apart from the corpse sect, I couldn't think of any other corpse raising clan in this world. With suspicion in my heart, I carefully looked at the 6 people in the arena, trying to find clues from their faces. However, after watching for a long time, I had to admit that apart from Lin Shui, I had never met the other 5 people in the arena. When I was in the corpse sect, I hid in the secret passage. Except for the so-called ancestor, I had peeked at everyone in the corpse sect. It could be said that there was no one in the corpse sect that I didn't know. However, the corpse sect was too big, and I couldn't be sure that I had seen all the disciples of the corpse sect. Thus, I couldn't rule out the possibility that the 2 clans in the arena were the remnants of the corpse sect. I turned to Wang Can and asked, "Do you know the details of these 2 clans?" Wang Can didn't know why I asked this question, but he still pondered for a moment before answering. Changshan Grotto Heaven is another name for Gubei Yu and Heng Mountain. In the 5 mountain grotto heavens, Changshan is ranked first. As for LV Liang's blessed land, there's nothing special about it. The only thing unusual about it is that, like Changshan Grotto Heaven, they both practice the corpse controlling technique. Oh right, these 2 clans are very close to each other. Changshan is one of the main peaks of Taihang Mountain. LV Liang and Taihang Mountain are both in the west and the east of Shaanxi. Because of their geographical location and cultivation techniques, the 2 clans are hostile to each other. Now that they have met, no matter how strong they are, I'm afraid they won't let this matter go. Changshan is one of the main peaks of Taihang Mountain. Hearing this, my eyes couldn't help but flash. When I sneaked into the corpse sect, I entered the mountain through the Nyangzi Pass at the southern foot of Taihang Mountain and went all the way to the gate of the corpse sect. Changshan was also in the Taihang Mountain range, and it practiced the corpse raising technique. This was interesting. Since the corpse sect occupied the Taihang Mountain range, I didn't believe that they would allow another force to occupy their territory. Conversely, it was the same for Changshan Grotto Heaven. It was very likely that Changshan Grotto Heaven was the remnant of the corpse sect. Or it could be said that the corpse sect was an outer force of the eternal mountain Grotto Heaven. When Tai Sui went berserk, he only destroyed the corpse sect and didn't uproot the eternal mountain Grotto Heaven. With the scale of the corpse sect, it's normal for there to be remnant forces left behind. I just didn't expect to run into them so soon. Of course, all of this is just my conjecture. Whether it's true or not still needs to be verified. Apart from that, I couldn't understand Lin Shui's actions. If the truth was as I guessed, with Lin Shui's identity, she should have joined the everlasting mountain cave. She shouldn't have joined the opposing Lu Liang blessed land. Either my conjecture is wrong, or there's something I can't see through. As I continued to speculate, on the stage, the 2 sides had already started fighting. Their methods were different from the others. As soon as the 2 forces attacked, they didn't join in. Instead, they controlled their corpse puppets to kill each other. Although the battle was intense, it was less dangerous. Back when I was in the corpse sect, I had also participated in some battles. Generally speaking, the disciples of the corpse sect would control their corpse puppets to fight. However, when it came to a life and death situation, they would have to join the battle themselves. Only then would they be able to display their full strength. However, the 2 forces on the stage had been fighting for a long time, but they didn't have the slightest intention of joining the battle themselves. It wasn't until the glorious knowledge realm Earth Master from the eternal mountain grotto heaven cupped his fist and admitted defeat that I realized that the two forces didn't seem to have any enmity with each other. It was clear that they had already colluded with each other. Officer Wang also noticed this and sighed with a strange expression. This shouldn't be the case. How could it be like this? The battle on the stage was still going on. Lin Shui's purple Chun corpse was very intelligent. It seemed to know the meaning of this battle. It didn't look like it was going to risk its life at all. It just used its speed to constantly move around and adjust its breathing. After it had used up most of its energy, it suddenly changed its rhythm. A purple light gathered on its right fist, and it knocked down the Heaven Master Realm refined corpse with a single punch. They were both at the Heaven Master Realm, so no matter how powerful the purple Chun corpse was, it couldn't easily take its opponent's life with a single punch. However, the moment the refined corpse fell to the ground, the Heaven Master Seal quickly controlled the refined corpse to not let it get up. He quickly cupped his fist and admitted defeat. The results of the two battles were out. The eternal mountain grotto heaven was eliminated and Lu Liang blessed land advanced. The two Heaven Master Yang God Celestial Masters, who were still fighting, saw the results and immediately stopped. They didn't even greet each other before hurriedly leaving the stage. This was a very big upset, but compared to the result, what was more surprising was the attitude of both sides. This was the all-heaven competition that involved the redistribution of cultivation resources. Even the 10 grotto heavens had to treat this seriously. No one could have imagined that the eternal mountain grotto heaven and Lu Liang blessed land would treat it this way. Of course, even so, no one would accuse them of being shady. Everyone could see that there was an exchange of benefits between the two sides. Thus, the spectators all had an indifferent attitude. However, a small portion of them were quite excited. They lowered their heads and calculated the probability of them encountering Lu Liang blessed land in the next round. Only I was still frowning in confusion. I couldn't understand the situation in front of me. Could it be that my previous guess was wrong? That the eternal mountain grotto heaven and Lu Liang blessed land were both remnants of the corpse sect? However, this still couldn't explain the situation in front of me. An exchange of benefits. Both sides definitely had an exchange of benefits. What kind of benefits did Lu Liang blessed land offer to make their archenemy, the eternal mountain grotto heaven, be willing to exchange their spot in the all-heaven competition? Thinking about this, a light suddenly flashed in my mind. If my guess was correct, the eternal mountain grotto heaven really was a remnant of the corpse sect. Then, what was the most important thing to the remnant of the corpse sect? It definitely couldn't be the true dragon vein. Although the yin energy that the people of the corpse sect cultivated belonged to the category of Tao energy, it was infinitely closer to shaman energy. Thus, the true dragon vein was useless to them. They also couldn't have the formation that could transform the true dragon vein into shaman energy like the Wanwu grotto heaven. If the true dragon vein was useless, then what was useful? The scene of the first time I saw the corpse of the Tai Sui in the corpse sect appeared in my mind. The yin energy that the corpse sect relied on to cultivate was all provided by the corpse of the Tai Sui. After the corpse sect was destroyed, the corpse of the Tai Sui was also destroyed. The conclusion was obvious. At this moment, what the remnant of the corpse sect needed the most was the corpse of the Tai Sui, or the yin energy it emitted. Only this kind of thing that was related to the foundation of cultivation was worth using the ranking of the heavenly abode and the cultivation resources like the true dragon vein to exchange for it. If that was the case, there must be the corpse of the Tai Sui in Lu Liang blessed land. Even if there wasn't, it should be something that could provide yin energy. I couldn't help but feel moved. The witchcraft energy in this world was thin. Although the formation in the Wanwu grotto heaven could provide endless witchcraft energy, I couldn't stay in the Wanwu grotto heaven for a long time, and the witchcraft energy here couldn't be taken away. According to my original plan, I planned to find time to go to the Heavenly Dragon Temple in Thailand to find the trace of the Tai Sui there. Of course, the Tai Sui's corpse was huge, so even if I found it, I couldn't carry it with me. However, I still had the jade bracelet that Lao Ai had given me. The jade bracelet contained the true dragon vein that I had absorbed in the Metaphysics Society. However, that true dragon vein was dying, and I had taken away the saliva of the true dragon. Moreover, when Xiao Jin was cultivating, he sucked it every day, so there wasn't much left. After Xiao Jin left, I hadn't used it for a year. At this time, the jade bracelet still had a lot of space. If I could find the corpse of the Tai Sui, it would be the best place to temporarily store witchcraft energy. In the past, I might have wondered if the jade bracelet could absorb witchcraft energy. But now I understood that Tao energy was witchcraft energy, and the true dragon vein was the corpse of the Tai Sui. Since the jade bracelet could absorb the true dragon vein, it could also absorb the Tai Sui's witchcraft energy. The journey to Thailand was long, and I had heard everything from the black-clothed Azan. I wasn't sure what the truth was. Lu Liang Blessed Land was different. Lu Liang Mountain was only 100 miles away from the Wangu Grotto Heaven. As a family in a blessed land, although they had the Yang God Celestial Master, their strength was limited. They couldn't pose a threat to me. If that was the case, I could use them. Chapter 602. While I was thinking about it, the next match in the ring was about to begin. After Changshan Cave Heaven and Lu Liang's Blessed Land, the next battle was between East Peak Taishan Cave, which was ranked third among the 36 minor paradises, and Lingshan Blessed Land, which was ranked 31st among the 72 blessed lands. According to the order, Nantian Mountain Blessed Land should be fighting against Taishan Cave Heaven. However, in the last round, Lingshan Blessed Land, which had only sent 2 people, defeated Nantian Mountain Blessed Land and replaced it. The Lu family had been able to win in the last round because Lu Qingyi and Lu Qingping were strong. On the other hand, Nantian Mountain Blessed Land was weak. Although they had the Yang God Celestial Master, they did not have enough talents among the Seal Celestial Masters and Earthly Masters. In this round, the Lu family basically had no chance against Taishan Cave Heaven, which was ranked third among the 36 minor paradises. Between Lu Qingyi and Lu Qingping, winning against one of them was already the limit. It was almost impossible to win both battles. The Lu family was also gloomy. Everyone's faces were filled with despair. However, at the same time, the Lu family frequently turned their heads and looked into the distance, as if they were hoping for something. I didn't need to ask to know that they must be waiting for Lu Zhenyang. However, I didn't understand why Lu Zhenyang hadn't appeared on the second day of the battle. If he hadn't appeared yesterday because he was confident that the Lu family could win smoothly, it would have made sense. However, today, facing the powerful Taishan Cave Heaven, he had no reason not to appear. Could it be that something had happened to him? I hoped that was the case, but the problem was that Lu Zhenyang already had the cultivation of Yang God, and his strength was not ordinary within the Yang God realm. Although the world was big, how many people could be his match? Moreover, I once heard that after condensing the Yang God, cultivators would have a kind of magic power that could shrink the ground into an inch. With a slight movement, they could travel thousands of miles in an instant, and it was difficult to catch up with them in the same realm. Therefore, when one reached the Yang God realm, it was basically impossible to be killed. While I was thinking, the 3 people from Taishan Cave Heaven had already taken their positions in the arena. They were 2 old and 1 young. As for the Lu family, they took their time walking up the stairs. It took them a long time to reach the side of the arena. At this moment, the leader, Lu Qingyi, sighed. The hope on his face finally disappeared and was replaced by disappointment. He smiled bitterly and said, forget it. Zhenyang hasn't arrived yet, so he definitely won't be able to make it in time. Qingping, the survival of the Lu family depends on you and me today. Hearing this, some decisiveness also appeared on Lu Qingping's face. After heavily nodding his head, he still did not say anything. He only took 2 quick steps and followed closely behind Lu Qingyi. The 2 of them leapt onto the stage at the same time. Lu Qingyi, who was at the front, had already regained his calm demeanor. He cupped his fists towards the 2 elders and one youth of Grand Mountain Grotto Heaven and said, "Spiritual Mountains Lu family, may I ask?" He had only spoken halfway when the sound of something tearing through the air suddenly came from afar. This sound wasn't made by a sharp object. It was more like someone flying in the air, making the sound of clothes tearing through the air. It instantly made people realize that someone was flying over from afar. Within Wangu Cave Heaven, there was a mountain protection formation. When one approached the entrance, one couldn't fly. Moreover, Tiantan Peak, where the arena was located, was the core area of Wangu Cave Heaven. Not to mention ordinary cultivators, even Yang God's celestial master couldn't fly here. Thus, when they heard this sound, everyone had a strange expression on their faces. They turned their heads to look for the source of the sound. I was also stunned. I followed the crowd and looked into the distance. On the west side of the arena, a small black dot appeared. As the sound of clothes tearing through the air grew louder, the small black dot became clearer and clearer. A few seconds later, a figure appeared in everyone's vision. This person was dressed in a black robe. He had a stooped figure and wore an iron mask on his face. Who else could it be but Lu Zhenyang? It wasn't strange for Lu Zhenyang to appear at this time. After all, today was the day of the Lu family's battle. No matter what, he should be there. However, what was strange was that Lu Zhenyang's current posture was a little weird. He was lying on his stomach, to be more specific. He was flying in midair, but his body maintained a crawling posture with all 4 limbs on the ground. It looked extremely weird. However, what was even weirder wasn't his posture, but the fact that there was a beast that looked like a dog and a deer sitting on his back. It wasn't strange for a person to ride on a beast, but for a beast to ride on a person's back was absurd and strange. Moreover, Lu Zhenyang's body was obviously emitting the aura of an expert. Yet, he was being used as a mount by a small beast. It gave people a strong feeling that it was unreal. They almost didn't dare to believe their eyes. I was even more shocked than the others. The others might not be able to recognize the beast that was sitting on Lu Zhenyang's back, but I recognized it at first glance. This fellow was the Qilin that I had forgotten in the monster refining gourd. When the monster refining gourd was taken away by Lu Zhenyang, I felt a little regretful for the Qilin. Although this fellow was arrogant and didn't care about people, he was still the incarnation of the Qilin goo in my body and the miraculous item from Chio's tomb. He was also a legendary beast. Even if he had a bad temper, I didn't want Lu Zhenyang to have him. During this period of time, I had been speculating whether Lu Zhenyang had discovered the Qilin and whether he had been subdued. However, I never expected that when Lu Zhenyang and the Qilin appeared in front of me again, it would be in such a scene. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Lu Zhenyang carried the Qilin and flew to the sky above the arena before landing. After landing, Lu Zhenyang maintained his crawling posture with all 4 limbs on the ground. His face was hidden behind the iron mask, so I couldn't see his expression. I could only hear his stiff and trembling voice from behind the mask. "Senior, we have arrived at the Heaven Temple Peak. Please abide by the agreement." Lu Zhenyang said this short sentence word by word. Just from his tone, it wasn't hard to imagine the anger and grievance he was feeling. I was confused as I looked at him. When I had first seen the Qilin in Chio's tomb, I had tried many methods, but I couldn't find any power or supernatural power. Besides its strange appearance, it was no different from an ordinary dog. Lu Zhenyang, on the other hand, had the power to fight against Ah Fu in Chio's tomb. Later on, he had received Chio's inheritance and condensed his sun god. His power had become even more terrifying. I couldn't understand what the Qilin had done to make Lu Zhenyang endure such humiliation without daring to resist. The Qilin was squatting on Lu Zhenyang's back. He closed his eyes as if he was taking a nap. When he heard what he said, he lazily lifted his head and looked around. Then, he gently jumped off Lu Zhenyang's back. Under the gazes of the crowd, he lifted his head and leisurely walked half a circle around the arena. Finally, he walked towards me. At this moment, everyone's gazes focused on me. I also felt strange. The Qilin used to ignore me, but as soon as he appeared, he returned to my side. I couldn't understand what was going on. The Qilin walked to my side and squatted down as usual. Seeing this, the expressions of the surrounding people from the blessed paradises changed. They looked at me cautiously, especially Zhao Hao, who had a grudge against me. Before. He glanced at me and then at the Qilin, his face full of surprise. Apart from these people, there was also an extremely angry gaze that looked at me. It was none other than Lu Zhenyang, who had just crawled up from the ground. From his gaze, Lu Zhenyang had obviously blamed the Qilin for humiliating him on me. When there were too many lice, there was no itch. When there were too many debts, there was no need to worry. Anyway, Lu Zhenyang and I had a life-and-death relationship. It didn't matter if he bore a grudge against me. What gave me a headache was the gazes of the surrounding people from the blessed paradises. The Qilin had humiliated a sun god's celestial master, which meant that his power was much higher than a sun god's. If he was alone and followed me, he would only intimidate the others, which would be a good thing. However, the crux of the matter was that the Qilin wasn't a human. He was just a magical beast. It was hard to guarantee that the others wouldn't covet him. Just as I was having a headache, Lu Zhenyang helped me out. After glaring at me for a while, he shifted his gaze and jumped onto the arena. He walked to Lu Qingyi and Lu Qingping's side and looked at the people from the grand mountain grotto heaven. A hoarse voice came from behind the iron mask. Chapter 603. Lu Zhenyang's voice wasn't loud, but his words were full of disdain. Then, he glanced around as if he didn't put the people from the blessed enclave in his eyes. The people who had been attracted by the Qilin all turned to look at Lu Zhenyang. There were a total of 118 blessed enclaves, and the strongest ones were the 10 great enclaves and the Xuanda enclave. There were also many weaker ones, but no one had ever dared to be so arrogant. The blessed enclave's strength was ranked at the bottom, so Lu Zhenyang's behavior annoyed many people. For a moment, Zhao Hao, Huang Fuxiu, and the others looked at Lu Zhenyang with unkind eyes. However, I became more cautious in my heart. Since Lu Zhenyang was being ridden by the Qilin, other people might think that Lu Zhenyang's strength was weak. However, I understood that Lu Zhenyang's strength was extremely strong. Since he dared to act so arrogantly on the stage, he must have something to rely on. At this time, Officer Wang made a hand seal with his right hand and closed his eyes to sense. Then, he came over and said to me doubtfully, "The Wanwu Grotto Heaven's protective formation is intact." But when Lu Zhenyang came in, I didn't sense anything. It's really strange. Then, without waiting for my answer, he waved his hand. Immediately, a figure came over and bent down in front of Officer Wang. I didn't know what he said, but after a while, that person dashed away in a hurry. I guessed he had gone to check the protective formation. The Wanwu Grotto Heaven's protective formation was created by the West City Lord, and it had been controlled by the previous masters of the Grotto Heaven. Not to mention its extraordinary power, it was second to none in the world in terms of mystery. Officer Wang had been in charge of the Wanwu Grotto Heaven for a long time, so he had a good grasp of the formation. But even so, he hadn't sensed anything before Lu Zhenyang appeared. This situation could only mean one thing. Lu Zhenyang's strength was strong enough to avoid the detection of the Wanwu Grotto Heaven's protective formation. I had a bad premonition. When Lu Zhenyang took the devil refining gourd, He must have gained something from it. While I was worried, Lu Zhenyang stood on the stage without the slightest bit of fear. It was probably because he was ashamed of being ridden by Qilin just now. At this time, he looked around and deliberately emitted the aura of a Yang God Celestial Master, attracting the attention of the cultivators below the Yang spirit on the viewing platform. Even the Yang God Celestial Masters felt his Yang spirit aura and their faces became serious. Among the crowd, only two people showed joy on their faces. They were naturally Lu Qingping and Lu Qingyi. Before Lu Zhenyang appeared, the two of them had ugly expressions in front of the Yang God Celestial Master of the Taishan Grotto Heaven. Lu Zhenyang's appearance was undoubtedly a divine medicine that could bring the dead back to life. He couldn't care less about his status as an elder and actually rushed forward to greet Lu Zhenyang. Lu Qingyi took the lead and arrived in front of Lu Zhenyang. He looked him up and down, and the emotions on his face were hard to describe. After pondering for a while, he finally spat out a few words in a low voice. "Zhenyang, you have returned." Lu Qingyi was Lu Zhenyang's father. In some aspects, he might not be a qualified father. Lu Zhenyang's ending today was partly due to his and Lu Xiang's excessive pampering. But from Lu Zhenyang's point of view, he was obviously very fond of his father, Lu Qingyi. Lu Zhenyang retracted his Yang spirit aura and quickly stepped forward, letting Lu Qingyi look at him. He replied in a muffled voice, "Yes, I'm back." The conversation between father and son was very short, but they clearly understood the meaning behind it. Lu Zhenyang understood Lu Qingyi's heartache, and Lu Qingyi could also empathize with Lu Zhenyang's painstaking efforts to become like this. This painstaking effort was naturally referring to me. Lu Qingyi wiped away the tears in his eyes and looked at me across Lu Qingyi's broken body. In his eyes, there was a hint of resentment. Previously, I had met Lu Qingyi once. At that time, because of Zhang Canwen's interference, he spared me once. However, after experiencing the incident at the royal mausoleum of Yinshang and seeing Lu Zhenyang's current appearance that was neither human nor ghost, Lu Qingyi probably regretted not killing me back then. I sighed. Lu Qingyi was obviously different from Lu Xiang and Lu Zhenyang. This could be seen from the fact that he had spared me. But the hatred between me and the Lu family was very deep. It was already a situation where one of us would die. No one could change this. The scene of Lu Zhenyang and Lu Qingyi's deep affection didn't last long. On the other side of the arena, the people of Taishan Grotto Heaven had already lost their patience. The young man among the two old men and one young man was the first to lose his patience. He took a step forward with his hands behind his back and said loudly, "Taishan Li Jihuan, please give me some pointers, fellow Taoist of Lingshan." After saying that, he didn't hide his strength anymore. A rainbow light flew out from the top of his head. A huge amount of Taoist qi and true essence flew back and forth in the air, tearing apart the sky. His white robe fluttered even though there was no wind, and he instantly became the focus of the audience. Wang Qin leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Taishan Grotto Heaven, also known as Pengxian Grotto Heaven, has a circumference of 1,000 miles. It is located in Qianfeng County, Yenzhou, which is now Tai'an, Shandong. It is ranked third among the 36 minor grotto heavens. Li Jihuan is quite famous in the Blessed Grotto Heaven. He is recognized as the genius who is most likely to break through to the Yang spirit realm within 50 years. Even some heavenly masters who have already condensed their Yang spirits don't have much chance of winning in front of him. Lu Zhenyang has met his match, so he has kicked an iron plate." I looked at Li Jihuan but didn't say anything. On the path of cultivation, every step forward required the accumulation of time, but more importantly, it depended on one's talent. For example, people like Liang Tianxin, who had a lifespan of 1,000 years, were limited by their talent. It was almost impossible for them to reach the Yang spirit realm in their lifetime. Li Jihuan looked very young. He was at most 25 or 26 years old, but he was already very close to reaching the Yang spirit realm. He was indeed worthy of the reputation of the entire blessed grotto heaven. Unfortunately, such a genius was not enough in front of Lu Zhenyang. It wasn't that I wanted to boost others' morale and belittle my own, but based on Lu Zhenyang's performance in Qiu's tomb, this Li Jihuan was probably still not his match. Lu Zhenyang clearly had the same opinion as me. He also took a step forward and stood in front of Lu Qingyi and Lu Qingping. He looked at Li Jihuan and said calmly, "To be able to have the same level of cultivation as me at this age, you can be considered a genius. However, in this world, there is no lack of geniuses. However, killing a few of them is also refreshing." After saying that, without waiting for Li Jihuan to react, Lu Zhenyang exerted strength in his feet. His body surged with true essence, and he turned into a black ray of light, heading straight for Li Jihuan. As expected of Lu Zhenyang, he always looked like he was the boss of the world. With just a few words, he had completely destroyed the once-in-100 years genius of the grand mountain grotto heaven. I didn't find it strange that he had said those words. If he hadn't said those words, he wouldn't be Lu Zhenyang. However, what he did next shocked me. He actually ignored the rules of the heavenly grand ritual. He didn't wait for the announcement of the start of the battle, and he didn't wait for everyone to walk to their respective areas. He openly attacked in front of everyone. Li Jihuan, who was opposite him, was also shocked. Clearly, he didn't expect that he would encounter such a lunatic who didn't play by the rules. However, after a while, he reacted. He immediately mobilized his true essence and sent the two elders behind him to the side. Then, he formed a seal with his hands and began to deal with Lu Zhenyang. Under Li Jihuan's control, the incomparably solid celestial master Yang spirit above his head began to slowly rotate. In an instant, within a 3-foot radius around him, a gust of wind that was hundreds of feet high appeared. Like a raging dragon emerging from the sea, it headed straight for Lu Zhenyang. Li Jihuan's figure could not be seen in the astral winds. Only his indifferent voice could be heard. "Killing an ugly thing like you won't make me feel refreshed. I'll only feel disgusted." This Li Jihuan was clearly someone who wouldn't suffer a loss with his words. After the tit-for-tat ridicule, the astral winds that Li Jihuan urged became even more violent. Fortunately, there was the power of the heavenly grand ritual. Otherwise, the astral winds alone would have seriously injured most of the surrounding cultivators. However, Lu Zhenyang's expression did not change at all. He did not place the astral winds in his heart at all. With a wave of his right hand, the surrounding air instantly froze. After that, countless blood-red strands appeared on his body, tightly wrapping around his withered and ugly body. His entire being abruptly increased in speed, charging straight into the violent astral winds. Did Lu Zhenyang become a fool after being beaten by Qilin? He actually used his flesh and blood to resist the full blow of the celestial master Yang spirit? Wang Can's eyes widened, his face full of confusion. However, he quickly exhaled and smiled again. "That's good. Dying in the hands of Li Jihuan will save us a lot of trouble." Not only Wang Can, but many people in the surrounding stands were also stunned. They had an expression that said, "This child is strong, but not smart." On the path of cultivation, although the physical body would be strengthened with every increase in cultivation, this was not the essence of cultivation. The so-called cultivators didn't cultivate the physical body, but the divine soul. Therefore, no matter how high a cultivator's cultivation was, the physical body was just a bag of skin, far less powerful than the Yang spirit. The people in the audience were all outstanding people in the cultivation world. Even if their cultivation was not as good as Lu Zhenyang and Li Jihuan in the arena, there was not much difference. Naturally, they all understood this truth. Therefore, in their opinion, Lu Zhenyang's act of using his mere physical strength to resist the power of the celestial master Yang spirit was extremely stupid. It was tantamount to hitting a stone with an egg. Even I couldn't help but have some doubts in my heart. I glanced at the astral winds. At this time, Lu Zhenyang had been completely engulfed, and not even a trace of his shadow could be seen. From the moment Lu Zhenyang suddenly launched an attack to the moment he broke into the astral winds driven by Li Jihuan, only 10 seconds had passed. Was the battle over? If that was the case, Lu Zhenyang was too stupid. Chapter 604. After swallowing Lu Zhenyang, the astral wind dragon became even more demonic. It spun back and forth in the arena, and every gust of astral wind was like an invincible steel knife, constantly slicing through the air. The air was filled with the sound of bones breaking. After a few breaths, the astral wind around Li Jihuan gradually dissipated, revealing his slightly young but incomparably heroic bearing. The corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. With a wave of his right hand, the raging astral wind dragon turned around from the other end of the arena. It transformed into a small tornado and stopped in the palm of his hand. Lu Zhenyang from the spiritual mountain? Li Jihuan weighed the tornado in his hand with disdain. That's all you got. I don't know how terrifying that tornado is, but I can sense from the piercingly cold wind that it emitted that it's definitely not a power that anyone can resist with their flesh and blood. Even a young god wouldn't be able to survive under this kind of power. A bit of black light rose from the bottom of the tornado, like a goldfish caught in a whirlpool. It shook its body in an attempt to struggle, but how could such a small body be a match for the whirlpool? Its struggle was just a form of unwillingness before its death. Lu Qingyi had just reunited with his son, and then he saw his son's life in danger. The blood on his face instantly disappeared. After a moment of silence, he finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He took 2 steps forward and activated his true essence. He ignored the rules of the heavenly grand ritual and didn't care whether he was a match for Li Jihuan or not. He pretended to save Lu Zhenyang from Li Jihuan. He used the power of a heavenly master to compete with a young god's celestial master. This kind of behavior can only be described as stupid, but looking at his movements, my heart revealed a trace of unbearable. Perhaps it was because it involved the Lu family, but I couldn't help but remember that when Lu Ziyan tried to kill me, my father was the same as Lu Qingyi. For the sake of his child, he didn't hesitate to raise his hoe high and stand opposite a heavenly master. That's how fatherly love is in the world. It's like my father's love for me and Wang Kuan's love for little Wang Li. The Lu family should all die, but in my heart they shouldn't die like this. The all-heaven competition has its own rules. As Officer Wang has invited me to help him, I can't break the rules. So, even though I can't bear it, I can only sigh from afar. Wang can seem to read my mind. He chuckled and said, "Why are you sighing? Lu Zhenyang's death is a good thing for us." Hearing that, I smiled wryly and shook my head. Lu Zhenyang's death is indeed a good thing for me. However, I didn't sigh for him. I only sighed because of Lu Qingyi's love for him. I didn't know what to say to Officer Wang, so I kept quiet and looked at the arena. I didn't stop Lu Qingyi, but someone else did. Just as Lu Qingyi was about to make a move, Lu Qingping, who was at the side, extended his hand and grabbed his arm, and loudly advised, "Big brother, the battle between the young god Heavenly Master is no longer something we can control. For the sake of the clan, let's just wait. If Zhenyang fails, we still have to ensure that we win the remaining 2 matches." "Clan," Lu Qingyi muttered. He clenched his fist and prepared it several times, but in the end, he didn't make a move. Seeing that Lu Qingyi had calmed down, Lu Qingping heaved a sigh of relief. He turned to Li Jihuan and cupped his hands in salute. Just as he was about to say something, his expression suddenly froze and his eyes shone. I hastily turned to look at Li Jihuan. I saw that the black light that had disappeared from the tornado had reappeared. It flickered in the boundless true essence. In just a few breaths, it was as bright as a fireball. The disdainful expression on Li Jihuan's face disappeared and he frowned. He immediately mobilized all the true essence in his body and sent it into the tornado. It was obvious that Lu Zhenyang didn't sit still and wait for his death. The speed at which Li Jihuan moved his true essence was very fast, but the black light that Lu Zhenyang had turned into was even faster. Taking advantage of the time when Li Jihuan was moving his true essence, the black light went against the tornado and rushed towards Li Jihuan's palm. That kind of crazy energy dyed the entire tornado black. Li Jihuan looked exhausted, and the disdainful expression on his face was nowhere to be found. Officer Wang got up from my side and cried out, "How could this be?" Looking at his appearance, he was actually even more anxious than Li Jihuan. Of course, the result of the battle wouldn't go according to Officer Wang's wishes. In fact, just as I had thought, Lu Zhenyang's strength wasn't inferior to Li Jihuan's. Even if he had unexpectedly chosen to resist Li Jihuan's true essence tornado with his body, he could still break it with brute force. Li Jihuan screamed, and the tornado in his right hand instantly went out of control and escaped from his palm. The black tornado spun faster and faster in the arena, and its volume became bigger and bigger. In just a few breaths, it had covered the entire arena. Li Jihuan shrank in place. He didn't care that Lu Zhenyang was about to escape. He just held his right hand and let Lu Zhenyang attack with all his strength. The result of their battle would largely determine the fortune of their families for 100 years. There was no room for mercy. Li Jihuan didn't want to show mercy when he chose to stop. The only possibility was that he didn't have any strength left. The moment Lu Zhenyang got rid of the tornado, he had already destroyed his right hand. The spinning tornado paused for a moment, then dispersed. Lu Zhenyang's ugly, broken body appeared. After the tornado dispersed, I finally saw Li Jihuan's situation. He was even more distressed than I had expected. There was no flesh on his right palm, and there was a hole the size of a baby's fist. I was surprised by Lu Zhenyang's ruthlessness. However, Lu Zhenyang didn't care. He made a grabbing motion with his right hand, and the drifting astral wind gathered in his palm, turning into a long, black astral wind dragon. With just a glance, I was inwardly shocked. His astral wind dragon was many times stronger than the tornado Li Jihuan had condensed with his true essence. The long dragon leaped up in the wind, almost blocking the sun in the sky, and the light in the entire venue became stagnant. Almost everyone could smell the thick smell of blood. Even though they were separated by the barrier of the arena, it still gave people a suffocating sense of pressure. Lu Zhenyang stood under the blood dragon. His black cloak fluttered even though there was no wind. The black mask on his face was as dark as a piece of 10,000-year-old ice. He placed his hands behind his back, giving off a condescending aura. 36 Grotto Heavens? It's just SOSO. Lu Zhenyang returned the words that Li Jihuan had used to ridicule him with just a moment ago. The difference was that he didn't mention Li Jihuan's name. He didn't even mention Taishan Grotto Heaven's name. It was as though he didn't care about it at all. I looked at Lu Zhenyang's mighty aura, and my expression turned solemn. The current Lu Zhenyang was completely different from before. In the past, he was like a clown. He was cruel, extreme, and childish. But now, with just a few words, he was extremely overbearing. The spectators around the arena didn't dare to mock Lu Zhenyang anymore. They also didn't think that it was stupid for Lu Zhenyang to use his physical body to resist the astral energy tornado. From the beginning to the end, Li Jihuan didn't have the initiative in this battle. Even if he controlled Lu Zhenyang's life and death, it was just a facade that Lu Zhenyang had purposely shown weakness. From the beginning, Lu Zhenyang had controlled the entire situation. I looked at the spectators on the viewing platform. The way they looked at Lu Zhenyang was no longer mocking him. Instead, their eyes were filled with fear and joy. It was as though they were glad that they hadn't met this madman. At this moment, Li Jihuan's pale face finally regained some color. He should be using his true yuan to recover from his injuries. The two elders of the sect who accompanied him seemed to want to help him, but he stopped them. Li Jihuan slowly raised his head and stared at Lu Zhenyang with a sad smile. What a good Lu Zhenyang from Spiritual Mountain! I underestimated you just now. Summon your celestial master, young spirit. Let's have a fair and square competition. Fair and square? I shook my head and smiled. As expected of a young genius from the heavenly abode, Jiang Hu was dangerous, especially in this arena where one's life was on the line. Who would fight you fair and square? Moreover, he was facing Lu Zhenyang, who was as sinister as a viper. His style wasn't fair and square. Fair and square. Lu Zhenyang sneered disdainfully, just as I had expected. Apart from asking a question, he didn't even reply. He raised his withered right hand and gently waved it. Without waiting for Li Jihuan to react, the black dragon charged straight at him. The astral wind dragon straightened its waist and streaked past Lu Zhenyang's ear. The entire movement seemed slow, but in the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of Li Jihuan. It opened its mouth and swallowed him. Even though Li Jihuan had already fought with Lu Zhenyang, this madman, who didn't play by the rules, he still found it difficult to deal with him. Before he was swallowed by the astral wind dragon, I clearly saw him forming hand seals. His speed was extremely fast, but he still wasn't able to dodge Lu Zhenyang's second surprise attack. Li Jihuan had just broken through to the late stage of Yang God's celestial master, but the astral wind dragon was unstoppable in his hands. Now, the dragon had fallen into the hands of the powerful Lu Zhenyang. When he used it, its power was many times stronger. The dragon circled above the arena and let out a few faint roars, as if it was shouting something. Its disdain was even greater than Lu Zhenyang's. After a few breaths, Lu Zhenyang gently put down his right hand that was suspended in the air. The astral wind dragon lowered its head and spat Li Jihuan out. At this moment, he had already fainted and fell to the ground like a broken sack. At this moment, the result of the battle was very clear. I originally thought that Lu Zhenyang would restrain himself a little, but I didn't expect that he would look around the stage and wave his hand. The astral wind dragon actually circled around the stage and charged straight towards the viewing platform. Even though there was the heavenly grand rituals barrier, the impact of this scene was extremely great. Even I couldn't help but change my expression. Some people even subconsciously summoned the Yang God seal to block it. In the end, the dragon didn't reach the viewing platform and instead collided with the barrier, turning into a resplendent light before dissipating. Wang Can stood beside me with the heavenly master seal with the words, "Holy Spirit Guard," floating above his head. His expression was frighteningly grave. Chapter 605. In the previous round, Lu Qingyi and Lu Qingping had fought against Nantian Blessed Land. Now, Lu Zhenyang had used his absolute strength to crush Grand Mountain Grotto Heaven's Li Jihuan. With 2 consecutive victories, it showed that the spiritual mountain Blessed Land behind the Lu family had risen from the bottom of the 72 Blessed Lands to the top of the 36 Lesser Grotto Heavens. Moreover, with Lu Zhenyang's strength, this year's spiritual mountain Blessed Land would probably be the biggest dark horse in the heavenly grand ritual. It was not impossible for it to advance a few steps in the rankings. Officer Wang had invited me and Fatty to help him because he wanted us to help him keep his position as the leader of the top 10 Grotto Heavens. Before Lu Zhenyang appeared, I was determined to become the champion. Fu's cultivation is at the late stage of Yang spirit, so he has the power to fight anyone. In addition, Fatty and I are confident that we can dominate our respective cultivation realms, so it will not be difficult for us to keep our positions. But now Lu Zhenyang's appearance has disrupted my plans. When Lu Zhenyang was at the Seal Celestial Master Realm, he had defeated Fu. Now that he had returned, Fu had no chance of winning. As for Lu Qingyi and Lu Qingping, they were able to carry the Lu family to this stage. Their strength was already extraordinary. Now that Lu Zhenyang had returned, if they were to be given some guidance, it would be hard to say if Fatty and I would be able to win. Just the Chiyu battle axe in Lu Zhenyang's hand had left a deep impression on me. At that time, he used the power of the Sealing Heavenly Master to activate the battle axe. If he had given the battle axe to Lu Qingyi to use in this battle, even I would not have had the slightest chance of winning. Although there were many experts in the Blessed Enclave, the one with the highest cultivation level was only the Yang God's Celestial Master. Faced with the absolute strength that Lu Zhenyang had displayed, no one dared to step forward and criticize this battle for not complying with the rules. Even the Grand Mountain Grotto Heaven could only swallow this insult. The remaining 2 contestants from the Grand Mountain Grotto first went up the stage and carried Li Jihuan off. Then, they braced themselves and went up the stage to fight the remaining 2 matches against Lu Qingyi and Lu Qingping. At this stage of the competition, the contestants themselves were the cream of the crop in their respective realms, and the difference in strength between them was not big. At this moment, the aura of the Grand Mountain Grotto Heaven had been completely suppressed. The results of these 2 battles could be imagined. After winning 3 rounds, the 3 from the Lu family walked down the arena side by side. Lu Qingping clearly didn't expect victory to come so easily. His face was full of joy, and his voice was much louder. Lu Qingyi and his son walked in silence, their eyes staring straight ahead. When they walked past where I was sitting, they both turned their heads to look in my direction. After they walked away, the fatty stared at their backs and said with hatred, "This guy seems to have become more powerful. He must have obtained the power of the demon purification gourd. The demon purification pot. Last time, I made Fatty lose the devil refining gourd, and I felt guilty. I'd been looking for a chance to take it back for him. However, as Lu Zhenyang grew stronger and stronger, the hope of taking back the demon purification gourd became smaller and smaller. What I was worried about the most wasn't that I couldn't take it back, but that Lu Zhenyang had found a way to use the monster refining gourd, just as the fatty had said. Divine artifacts have spirit. If Lu Zhenyang really finds a way to use it, and it recognizes him as its master, I'm afraid that it will be useless even if we take the demon purification gourd back in the future." After a moment of silence, I asked the fatty, "Aren't you connected to the demon purification gourd? Try to sense it and see if Lu Zhenyang has really used the demon purification gourd's power." The fatty shook his head and said dejectedly, "When Lu Zhenyang came out, I tried to sense it. I could sense its existence, but it was very vague. It seemed to be blocked by something. I tried to summon the demon purification gourd, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't tell if Lu Zhenyang had used the demon purification gourd's power or not." After listening to him, my eyebrows relaxed. I smiled and comforted him. "If it's really like what you said, Lu Zhenyang definitely can't use the demon purification gourd's power." The fatty looked confused. "Why do you say that?" I continued, "Think about it. You can sense the demon purification gourd, but you can't clearly sense it. There's only one explanation for this situation. Lu Zhenyang has purposely hidden the demon purification gourd's aura. Lu Zhenyang's power is very strong. If he really found a way to use the demon purification gourd, he wouldn't need to hide it. On the contrary, he didn't find a way to use it, so he purposely hid it. After all, you're the owner of the demon purification gourd. He's afraid that you'll use some secret technique to take the demon purification gourd away from him." After listening to my explanation, the fatty's face looked better. However, he soon frowned again. "That's not right. When we were in Shenzhen, Lu Zhenyang had just advanced to the Yang God's Celestial Master realm. It hasn't been that long. If he didn't use the demon purification gourd's power, how could his power have increased so much?" Then, he pointed at the Qilin not far away and continued to ask, "And the Qilin, it was originally in the demon purification gourd. If Lu Zhenyang didn't use the demon purification gourd, how could it come out?" I turned to look at the Qilin, who was squatting on the ground and napping. I shook my head. The Qilin's origin is mysterious. You saw it just now. It rode on Lu Zhenyang's head, but Lu Zhenyang didn't dare to say anything. So, it's possible that the Qilin came out of the demon purification gourd by itself. As for Lu Zhenyang's increase in power, it's reasonable. After all, he received Qiyou's inheritance. Qiyou is an ancient god of war. After receiving his inheritance, it would be strange if Lu Zhenyang's power didn't increase rapidly. After listening to my explanation, the fatty finally relaxed a little. However, from his expression, I could still see how much he valued the demon purification gourd. I sighed and pretended to be relaxed as I patted his shoulder. Don't worry, I'll definitely find an opportunity to get the demon purification gourd back. It's not that I don't want to help the fatty retrieve the demon purification gourd, but Lu Zhenyang's power is really too strong. I'm not his match at all. Moreover, I can't rashly fall out with him at the heavenly grand ritual and expose the demon purification gourd in front of so many people. It's one of the 10 legendary divine instruments. The appearance of such an important treasure will definitely cause a commotion in the cultivation world. If it's just Lu Zhenyang, I still have a chance. If the entire metaphysics world, including the power of the blessed paradises, were to join in, I really won't have the slightest chance. Of course, the fatty trusted me. Since I had said so, he didn't say anything else. He fiercely waved his fists at Lu Zhenyang's back to vent his anger. After Lu Zhenyang left, the venue quickly returned to its previous order. The next match was between the Vermilion Mountain Grotto Heaven and Qingyuan Mountain Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 19th among the 72 blessed lands. Qingyuan Mountain Grotto Heaven was located in Guangzhou's Qingyuan County. It wasn't famous among the many blessed lands, but its opponent, the Vermilion Mountain Grotto Heaven, was much more famous. The Vermilion Mountain Grotto Heaven was located in Nanyue Huing Mountain Grotto Heaven, in Huing Prefecture's Huing County. Both Buddhism and Taoism had existed there for a long time. According to an ancient book, the Nanyue Huing Mountain Grotto Heaven has a circumference of 700 li. It's called the Vermilion Mountain Grotto Heaven, in Huing Prefecture's Huing County. According to the Song Dynasty's Chen Tianfu's collection of total victories, Pai Yuan and Wang Gushen lived in the Nanyue Huing Mountain Grotto Heaven. The Jin Dynasty's Emperor Sima Yan conferred the title of Mr. Tai Wei, while Pai Yuan was conferred the title of Mr. Tai Su. From the Han Dynasty to the Wei and Jin dynasties, Taoism was passionate about refining inner alchemy, which was known as Qigong. Burning the alchemy to refine mercury was an external alchemy, which was also medicine, which was ancient chemistry. Today, at the foot of the southern mountain's Purple Cap Peak, there was a huge rock to the right of the Amitabha Temple's ruins. The Huangdan Rhapsody explained a lot about the Tao of alchemy, which was written by Taoism during the Wei and Jin dynasties. When Taoism came from the south, their alchemy techniques and medicine had a deep influence, but Taoism's ideology and culture had a deeper influence in the secular world. As for Buddhist culture, it entered Nanyue much later, about 200 years later. Hui Hai and Shi Dun were the first to arrive at Nanyue, around Liang Shi's Tianjin year, followed by Hui Si in Qinguang's second year. Hui Si taught her disciple Ji in Heng Mountain, which was then passed on to Zhang En, Fahua Heavenly Palace, and Jing Shi Zhanran, forming the Tiantai sect, also known as the Fahua sect. Hui Si was known as the Tiantai Three Grandmasters, and Ji was known as the Fourth Grandmaster. This sect's teachings spread to Japan, and was widely spread, also known as the Fahua sect. Nanchan's sixth Grandmaster Hui Ning taught at Chaoshi in Guangdong, and developed into the most important Buddhist sect in Nanyue. This was another overwhelming battle. The three people from Southern Mountain's Vermilion Mountain Grotto Heaven were obviously well-known figures in the same realm. As soon as they got on the stage, they used their divine abilities and spells, not giving Qin Yuanshan Blessed Land a chance to breathe. In less than 10 minutes, The person with the highest cultivation in Qin Yuanshan blessed land fell from the stage and admitted defeat. Next was the battle between Northern Mountains, Everlasting Mountain Grotto Heaven, and Gaoshi's Lanshuishan blessed land. Similarly, there wasn't much of a ripple, and it ended with the mystic Grotto Heaven's victory. Ever since the heavenly grand ritual had been carried out, the number of Grotto Heavens that could still stand on the stage had decreased. However, their strength had also increased, and both sides gave their all in every battle. After all, this was a major matter related to cultivation resources. The more resources they obtained, the faster the Grotto Heavens and blessed land would develop in the next 10 years. Only then would they have the chance to fight for a better ranking and better resources. Therefore, they had no choice but to fight with their lives on the line. However, after the incident with Lu Zhenyang, the atmosphere in the venue became much quieter. Although the battle was intense, there weren't many exciting parts. I didn't have much energy to watch, while the fatty slumped in his chair and fell asleep. Not long after, Wang Can came from outside the venue in a hurry. As a matter of fact, not long after Lu Zhenyang left, Wang Can followed him out. I didn't ask much, but I could guess the reason. It must be because of the protective formation. Wang Can sat down next to me and lowered his voice. Sage, the formation was broken. Although I had already guessed it, I furrowed my brows after hearing his confirmation. The Wanwu Grotto Heavens formation had been passed down for more than 1,000 years, and it wasn't weak at all. However, such a powerful formation had been broken. Moreover, Wang Can, the master of the formation, hadn't sensed it. How strong was Lu Zhenyang? What was more frightening was that the Wang family didn't have many talented people. Except for the 2 reclusive granduncles, Wang Can's only reliance was the protective formation. Now that the formation had been broken, Wang Can couldn't help but feel anxious. While I was deep in thought, the Qilin got up from the ground not far from us. It glanced at Wang Can and I. Then, it raised its 4 hooves, and a cloud seemed to form under its feet. It lifted its big body and ran far away. Although this little fellow was born from the Qilin goo that the old witch had planted in my body, it didn't treat me well. I didn't know what it wanted to do, and I couldn't stop it, either. As we had been together for a long time, I wasn't surprised by the Qilin's strange behavior. However, most of the people in the venue were still paying attention to the Qilin. As soon as they saw the Qilin move, their eyes followed it. At first, they thought that the Qilin riding on Lu Zhenyang was a joke. However, when Lu Zhenyang showed his formidable power, their eyes changed. If Lu Zhenyang was so strong, how strong would the Qilin be? Unconsciously, some people moved their eyes away from the Qilin and turned to look at me. No one cared about the Wanwu Wonderland's power, so their eyes were full of greed. I shook my head with a wry smile. Although I had put up a lot of defenses, I couldn't escape the fate of being the target of everyone. However, let them be. Anyway, the Qilin was strange. If they could rob it, they could. However, from the way the Qilin was riding on Lu Zhenyang, I knew those people wouldn't have a good ending if they provoked it. As I watched the Qilin fly away, a guess popped up in my head. When Lu Zhenyang came here, he was with the Qilin. If the Qilin was stronger than Lu Zhenyang, was it possible that the Qilin had broken the protective formation? After thinking about it for a while, I felt that it was highly possible, so I wanted to tell Wang Can. However, right at this moment, I felt a burning gaze not far from me. It was different from the gaze that wanted to take the Qilin as its own. This gaze was filled with joy, as if someone had found an oasis in the middle of a desert. I followed the gaze and saw Tsang Feng, the old monster from the mysterious treasure wonderland. Chapter 606. I didn't have any conflict with Tsang Feng, the old monster who looked like a child. I even felt a little sorry for him. After all, I had gotten the armor-stripping sword from him, while he had gotten false information from me. I didn't know what the yin and yang rui vase meant to Tsang Feng, but he was willing to exchange the armor-stripping sword for information about it. The yin and yang rui vase should be a very important thing to him. Wang Can told me that Song Feng had a grudge with his elder brother because of a woman, and they had a big fight. From this point of view, perhaps the yin and yang rui vase wasn't important to him, but that woman. The yin and yang rui vase was likely to be related to that woman. The most bitter thing in the world was missing someone. I had to find an opportunity to explain it to Song Feng. After understanding the reason, I didn't pay much attention to Song Feng's strange look. I nodded at her and turned to Wang Can, telling him about my speculation about the Kirin. Wang Can still frowned, but he nodded at me and said, "It's possible." He couldn't help but worry about this matter. The Wang family was going downhill, and the Wanwu Fairyland's protective formation was related to the safety of the entire Wang family. If something went wrong with the protective formation, even if the Wang family could keep their position as the champion, they wouldn't be in a better situation in the future. After keeping silent for a while, Wang Can said in a low voice, "I just checked the place where the formation was broken, leaving a gap. I've arranged for someone to repair it, but this formation has existed for a long time. I'm afraid it will take more than a month to completely repair it. During this time, I'm afraid I can't guarantee the sage's safety. You have to be careful." After such a big event, the first thing Wang Can thought about was my safety. I couldn't help but feel touched. I nodded and told him, "With my current cultivation base, I won't be at a disadvantage even if I fight with Celestial Master Yang Shun." After saying that, Officer Wang raised his head and looked at the arena. He still looked worried. I didn't need him to tell me more, as I could guess the reason. After thinking for a while, I said, "You don't have to worry about the competition. Go and fix the formation first. Fatty and I will do our best to look after the arena." As I said that, I glanced at the fatty. He was still sleeping soundly. After I said that, I gave him a slap. Before he could open his eyes, he jumped up from his chair. He looked around and asked confusedly, "What's wrong? What's wrong? Is it our turn?" According to the rules of the All-Heaven competition, there will only be one round today, and we've already fought. Looking at Fatty's noisy appearance, he was obviously still in a daze from sleep. Officer Wang had confidence in me, but it was hard to say whether he had confidence in Fatty or not. He glanced at the fatty, then turned to me and said, "If that's the case, I'll leave this place to the saints." After saying that, he left in a hurry. I looked at Wang Can's hurried back and then at the bewildered fatty. I had to admit that there was a difference between people. Fatty and Officer Wang were of the same age. Officer Wang only knew how to eat and sleep all day, while Officer Wang shouldered the heavy responsibility of his family. If their roles were swapped, Officer Wang would have lost 5 kilograms of fat in less than 3 days. At this point, the second round of the Heavenly Grand Ritual had already come to an end. There weren't many people on the arena. Only the top 10 Grotto Heaven families of the 36 minor Grotto Heavens were still fighting on the arena. Not long after, the last few families had finished their matches, and the top 32 families had entered the third round of the All-Heaven competition. Among them, none of the 10 Grotto Heavens were eliminated. However, among the 36 minor Grotto Heavens, there were quite a few dark horses. Even the powerful Xuanda Grotto had sent out all of their main forces, including Zhao Hao. The Changshan Paradise and the Taishan Paradise, which were ranked behind them, were directly eliminated. Those who were eliminated in this round still had a chance to stay in the 36 minor paradises, but they would only be ranked at the bottom. The true dragon veins in their hands would be taken out and divided again. It was obvious that they would decline in the future. As for the dark horses who had eliminated their strong opponents and entered the top 32, they would at least be ranked at the top of the 36 minor paradises. Their future prosperity was just around the corner. As for me, I had calmed down a lot. Although Lu Zhenyang's appearance had added a lot of variables to the All-Heaven competition, there were many strong enemies in the Blessed Paradises. It wouldn't be easy to get the first place, regardless of whether Lu Zhenyang was there or not. I didn't need to focus on Lu Zhenyang alone. Zhu Yuk of Qin Province, Calamity Dan of Mount Gazao, and so on. I needed to pay more attention to these families in the future. If I encountered them in the future, I could avoid being beaten up. After the results of today's competition were announced, I called out to the fatty and left to return to the Taoist palace. The fatty seemed to have had enough sleep, so he was full of energy on the way back. He kept on talking about how the chairs on the viewing platform were too hard and that it wasn't comfortable to sleep on. He said that he had to have a good sleep after returning. As I listened to him talk, I thought about the meeting between the Han family's heavenly teacher and me. As we walked forward, we got closer and closer to the Taoist palace. When we reached the lakeside, the fat man stopped walking. He didn't make a sound. I turned my head to ask him why he stopped, but he didn't say anything and pointed at the entrance of the Taoist palace. I looked up and immediately stopped talking. My heart tightened and I subconsciously activated the true essence in my body. I was extremely alert. At that moment, there was a figure leaning against the entrance of the Taoist palace. It was Lu Zhenyang. This was Wanwu Paradise. I didn't think that he would take the initiative to come here. How did he find this place? Why was he looking for me? Could it be that he couldn't wait any longer and wanted to fight me now? I didn't understand why he had come, but the fatty couldn't hold it in anymore. He rolled up his sleeves and shouted at Lu Zhenyang, "Lu Zhenyang, what are you doing here?" Lu Zhenyang's back was originally facing us. When he heard the voice, he turned around and walked away from the side of the Taoist palace. After walking a total of 10 steps, he stopped and raised his head to look at us. "It's nothing much. I just wanted to ask if you still want this broken copper pot." As he said that, Lu Zhenyang raised his right hand. His shriveled palm held a thin, cyan copper pot. From afar, it looked like the monster refining pot. Although the fatty's eyes were magical, they were the natural enemy of this kind of divine tool. His eyes were in so much pain that he couldn't open them. Although I was prepared, I didn't think that Lu Zhenyang would take out the monster refining pot. It was a divine tool. Judging from his performance in the feng shui selection shop, he should have wanted to take it for himself. Why did he take out the monster refining pot now? Could it be that he didn't come here to show off or fight with me, but to give me the monster refining pot? Impossible. I denied this thought. I took a step forward and stood in front of the fatty, isolating him from the monster refining pot. At that moment, the fatty got rid of the pain and said softly behind me, "Stall for time. I'll see if I can use this chance to get the monster refining pot back." No matter what Lu Zhenyang's purpose was, if we could get the monster refining pot back, it would ease our current passive situation. The fatty and the monster refining pot were connected telepathically, and the monster refining pot was in Lu Zhenyang's hand. At such a close distance, there was a possibility. As long as I could distract Lu Zhenyang, I could buy enough time for the fatty. At that time, without the monster refining pot, Lu Zhenyang wouldn't have any bargaining chip. Then, I lifted my head to look at Lu Zhenyang and said with a smile, "Lu Zhenyang, although I thought you were childish, I didn't expect you to be this childish. Tell me, why are you waiting for me here? With our relationship, I don't think you're willing to give up the monster refining pot to me." Lu Zhenyang was wearing a mask, so I couldn't see his expression. I only heard him sneer and say, "It's better to talk to smart people. Tell that fatty behind you to stop. I know that he has a connection with the devil refining gourd, but I've already placed a restriction on this broken gourd. He can't take it back. He tried so many times in the arena today. Didn't he try enough? I didn't need him to tell me. I could see the monster refining pot's current situation. Under the fatty's command, the monster refining pot shook in Lu Zhenyang's hand. The lid of the pot was knocked on the pot, but no matter how hard it shook, it couldn't escape from Lu Zhenyang's hand. The closest he got to success was only a height of 3 inches. But after that, a black light floated out from the bronze pot and hit him back down. Then, Lu Zhenyang didn't want to play anymore. He sneered and put away the monster refining pot. Seeing that there was no hope, the fatty could only give up. He walked to my side, his forehead wet with sweat. Chapter 607. Although he didn't manage to take back the demon purification gourd, he had at least confirmed my speculation. Lu Zhenyang really couldn't use the demon purification gourd, but he had sealed it with a restriction formation. As long as he didn't get the demon purification gourd's approval, it was possible to take it back. As for Lu Zhenyang's conditions, to be honest, I was a little tempted, but it was obvious that Lu Zhenyang had other purposes, so I couldn't make a decision right now. While I was thinking about whether I should agree or not, the fat man on the side couldn't help but jump out and say to Lu Zhenyang, "Don't think that Zhou Yi will be at your mercy just because you have the demon purification gourd. I'm the owner of the demon purification gourd. I'm telling you, I don't want this broken thing anymore. Zhou Yi won't risk his life for such a broken thing. Lu Zhenyang, go." The fat man hadn't been in contact with Lu Zhenyang for long, but from my words, he more or less understood what kind of character he was. If I agreed with Lu Zhenyang today, whether I could take the demon purification gourd back from him was one thing, and whether I could leave unscathed after taking the demon purification gourd back was another thing. I knew that the fat man said that because he was worried about my safety, but as a brother, how could I turn a blind eye when he was willing to give up a divine artifact for me? Since the fat man got the demon purification gourd, although he didn't say much on the surface, the excitement in his heart couldn't be concealed. And I was also very curious. Where was the place that Lu Zhenyang was talking about? What was his purpose? He was exchanging a divine artifact for me to go with him. The benefits that Lu Zhenyang could get from that place would definitely not be less than the demon purification gourd. The demon purification gourd was an extraordinary item even among the top 10 divine artifacts of the ancient times, and it ranked very high. I couldn't imagine what it was that surpassed the demon purification gourd. Could it be another divine artifact? And it ranked higher than the demon purification gourd? If that was the case, I had to consider Lu Zhenyang's proposal even more seriously. Of course, he wouldn't have any good intentions, but just like in Chio's tomb, Lu Zhenyang had gained something, and so did I. Moreover, if I went with him, I would at least have some idea of Lu Zhenyang's situation. Thinking deeper, I might even have a chance to fight for what he wants when the time comes. There was only one thing to worry about, and that was my own safety. In terms of strength, I was definitely not a match for Lu Zhenyang. However, it was not impossible for me to preserve my life in Lu Zhenyang's hands. After pondering for a moment, I nodded towards Lu Zhenyang and said, "All right, I promise you. But I can't go with you right now. The heavenly grand ritual hasn't." It was obvious that Lu Zhenyang placed great importance on this matter. His eyes shone as he stared at me. After I agreed to it, he didn't wait for me to finish before he interrupted me. "I know the purpose of your trip. You are with the Wang family and your goal is to become the head of the 10 heavenly caves. Don't worry, I won't take you away before the heavenly grand ritual ends. Not only that, I can also give you a big gift. If we meet in the arena later, I will surrender without a fight. What do you think?" The ranking in the all-heaven competition was extremely important to any of the heavenly caves. I never thought that Lu Zhenyang would give up so easily. The more decisive he was in giving up, the greater his goal was. It was the same logic as giving up on the devil refining gourd. However, this was also good. At the very least, I would face less resistance during the all-heaven competition. I nodded, accepting his proposal. Then it's settled. After the heavenly grand ritual ends, I'll come and find you. After saying that, Lu Zhenyang looked deeply at me. Then, with a tap of his foot, he leapt into the forest behind me. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared into the night. Just as he left, the fatty, who hadn't had a chance to speak, extended his hand and grabbed my arm. He shouted at me, "Third baby, are you crazy? What kind of person is Lu Zhenyang? Are you going to go just because he wants you to? If he wants you to commit suicide, are you going to listen to him?" In a moment of desperation, the fatty didn't hold back and tried to persuade me again. "Lu Zhenyang won't give up until he kills you. Listen to me. Let's not participate in the heavenly grand ritual anymore. I don't want the devil refining gourd anymore. Let's pack our things and quickly leave this place. If we can't do it, we'll go back to our old home and hide. It won't be too late to find him when our strength surpasses his." The fatty's concern caused him to panic. The more he spoke, the more agitated he became. He grabbed my arm and headed back to the palace. From the looks of it, he really wanted to leave with me immediately. I shook my arm and shook his hand off. I smiled wryly and said, "What are you so anxious about? Lu Zhenyang is powerful, but I'm not stupid. Don't be anxious. Listen to me first." After a lot of persuasion, the fatty finally calmed down a little. Afterwards, I told him what I had in mind. I naturally wouldn't take the initiative to throw my life away. I had already thought it through. Since Lu Zhenyang cared so much about this matter, I would give him some conditions before we set off. He would have no choice but to agree. At that time, I would ask Lu Zhenyang to first hand over the devil refining gourd and remove the restriction, giving it to the fatty for safekeeping. The fatty and the devil refining gourd had the same thoughts. Previously, the fatty couldn't control it because of the restriction. Now that the restriction was gone, the devil refining gourd would be able to be used in the fatty's hands. If Lu Zhenyang really had some tricks up his sleeves and wanted to attack me, we could also hide in the devil refining gourd. Although Lu Zhenyang was powerful, I didn't believe that he could break the devil refining gourd and get us out. If Lu Zhenyang really didn't attack us like he said, I would have the opportunity to find out Lu Zhenyang's true intentions. I might even have the opportunity to act in secret. For example, if Lu Zhenyang wanted to obtain the item, we could take it by surprise and then hide in the devil refining gourd. Lu Zhenyang would be dumbfounded. I told the fatty all of my speculations and plans. After listening to it, the fatty's expression finally relaxed. He pondered for a moment before letting out a long sigh. He patted his chest and said, "So that's what you're planning. It seems to make sense. Third baby, you have to think carefully. Don't go for wool and come home shorn. Both of our lives will be in danger." I sighed. Lu Zhenyang's cultivation is getting stronger and stronger. If I keep running away, there will be a day when I can't run away anymore. I might as well take a risk. Perhaps it was because he saw my helplessness. The fatty's voice became more spirited. He smiled and said, "I'm excited to be able to mess with Lu Zhenyang's matter. Third baby, since you've made up your mind, I'll risk my life to accompany you. When the time comes, I'll go with you." After deciding on this matter, the fatty and I continued to head back to the Holy Ji Palace. Because of Lu Zhenyang's appearance, I remembered the Wang family's formation, so I told the fatty about it. When the fatty heard this, he wasn't surprised by the strange way the formation was broken, nor was he worried about the hidden dangers after the formation was broken. Instead, he looked at me vigilantly and said, "Third baby, don't tell me that you want me to repair the Wang family's formation? Although I'm a genius in formations, geniuses have a bottom line. I don't know what your bottom line is, but my bottom line is that I won't repair Wang Can's formation no matter what." I really didn't know how this guy's brain worked. However, I hadn't thought about asking the fatty to repair the formation. After hearing his words, I had this idea. However, since the fatty was against it, I wasn't in a hurry. According to Wang Can, it would take at least 1 month to repair the formation. Even if the fatty was a genius, he wouldn't be able to repair it in a short time. It wouldn't be too late to tell him about it later. I wasn't in a hurry to repair the formation, but I was eager to get an answer about another matter. It was just my guess that the formation was broken by the Qilin. Since the fatty was good at formations, I could ask him to make a judgment for me. Otherwise, if my judgment was wrong and the formation was really broken by Lu Zhenyang, given my relationship with the Wang family, it could bring a great disaster to the Wang family. After I told the fatty about my plan, he became excited and hastily said, "All right, it's not difficult to determine. I just need to arrange a few formations and place them in front of the Qilin to see if he can break them. Then I'll know the answer. I also want to test the limits of my formations. When can we start?" This time I was in a dilemma. We can start anytime, but I don't know where the Qilin is today. He will come back. We'll wait for him to come back and try again. At that moment, the two of us had already reached the entrance of the Taoist palace. After saying that, I lifted my foot and stepped into the Taoist palace. I heard a snort. The fatty and I raised our heads to look. In the middle of the Taoist palace there was a huge dog with 4 limbs on the ground. Its black mane fluttered in the wind. It was the Qilin. Noticing that the fatty and I had returned, the Qilin glanced at us, and then raised its head proudly. It had come back here by itself? This guy had ridden Lu Zhenyang to the Wanwu Grotto Heaven today. He hadn't come to the Holy Ji Palace with me before, but he had come here by himself. It was really unexpected. However, after thinking about this guy's other actions, I felt relieved. There were too many unexpected things about this strange Qilin. It didn't matter if there was one more. The fatty next to me was surprised and laughed. Haha, I was wondering why Lu Zhenyang's posture was so strange at the entrance. He took more than 10 steps back while talking to us. It turned out that this little guy was here. I'm dying of laughter. Even if Lu Zhenyang is strong, he still looks like a sick cat in front of your big dog. Haha. Chapter 608. In any case, he had helped me vent my anger. My impression of the Qilin improved. I pointed at him and said to the fatty, "Since the Qilin is back, let's not wait any longer. Let's start the experiment." The fatty wanted to test his formation, so he didn't want to wait any longer. He nodded and followed me into the Taoist palace to prepare. To test if the Qilin had the ability to break the formation, we had to set up a formation first. Although Fatty loved to brag, he was still worthy of the title Array Formation Prodigy. Previously, in the arena, he had shrunk into the formation and won by exhausting his opponent's Taoist Qi. Thus, I didn't need to say much. The fatty set up a formation in a corner of the Taoist palace, preparing to set up a formation. He was very familiar with the process of setting up the formation. Not long after, the formation in his hand had taken shape. With the formation in place, all that was left was to lure the Qilin to break the formation. This made things difficult for me. Although the Qilin had always been by my side, and to some extent it was born from me, it was very strange. It wasn't as obedient as Tong Tong, and it wasn't as mischievous as the spirit snake. It was simply a steel plate that wouldn't budge. It only had one attitude towards me, and that was to ignore me. I circled the Qilin and observed it for a long time. Just like before, it didn't seem to care about me. It didn't even open its eyes. With a flash of white light, the fatty had finished setting up the formation. Until now I hadn't found a way to communicate with the Qilin, so I had to give up and look at the formation that the fatty had set up. The fatty's cultivation wasn't high, and he hadn't reached the Heavenly Master realm yet. Although his formation skills weren't bad, he was limited by his cultivation. I was worried that the formation he had set up would be too weak. If a formation was too weak, it could be broken by brute force. That way, we wouldn't be able to test the Qilin's ability to break the formation. Thinking about this, I said to the fatty, "Fatty, you know the Qilin's power. Even Lu Zhenyang isn't its opponent. If your formation is too weak, I'm afraid I won't be able to test its ability to break the formation." When we talked about formations, the fat man wasn't convinced. He probably thought that I was looking down on his formations, so he opened his mouth and retorted, "This formation of mine is called the Buddha formation. In our sect, it can be ranked in the top 10. It's not that I'm bragging, but even if I let you break this array, you might not be able to. Come, let me show you. Watch carefully." As he spoke, the fatty put his palms together and circulated his Taoist qi. The array formation began to operate. As the fat man moved, each of the 4 white dots around him shot out a silver light, connecting the 4 light dot. Qi of the way surged on it like waves of water. In an instant, a 4-cornered tower was built out of thin air, firmly protecting the fat man. Although I didn't know much about formations, I wasn't completely ignorant. Just from the phantom, I could tell that the pagoda formation was extremely profound. Although this formation wasn't ordinary, I was still a little worried. I explained, "It won't be easy for me to break the formation, but the Kirin isn't like me. With its power that could suppress Lu Zhenyang, it will be easy for it to break this formation. You'd better set up a few more. Otherwise, if we can't figure out what it is, our efforts will be in vain." The fat man snorted disdainfully at my words. "That's because you can't figure it out. Of course, I have a way to figure it out. It's true that my formation can't stop the Kirin, but when it breaks the formation, if I can't even tell the difference between brute force and ingenuity, then all my years of studying formations will have been in vain." After he said that, I reacted. I was just too worried. In fact, the fat man was right. With his attainments in formations, he should be able to easily figure out the Kirin's method of breaking the formation. I didn't need to worry about it. There were no more problems with the formation. The only thing left was how to communicate with the Kirin. I tried to talk to the Kirin, but it still ignored me. Feeling helpless, I remembered that Tong Tong had a good time with the Kirin in Chio's tomb. My mind flickered, and I summoned Tong Tong and the snake spirit. Tong Tong floated out of the jade bracelet. Her body was much more solid than before. It seemed that her cultivation base had advanced during this period of time. As soon as she came out, she greeted me, "Big brother." When she saw the Kirin, she became excited. Without waiting for me to say anything, she smiled and hugged the Kirin's neck. She was so happy. I didn't know what she said to that fellow, but the closed eyes of the Kirin suddenly opened and rubbed against Tong Tong's body a few times. I was speechless as I looked at his abnormal behavior. That fellow didn't pay attention to others, but he was happy with Tong Tong. I didn't know if it was because Tong Tong was very friendly or because he was a lullicon. Tong Tong was happy with the Kirin, but the snake spirit was the complete opposite. As soon as he came out from my back, he first shouted with a duck's voice. When he saw Tong Tong, his voice became softer. When he saw the Qilin next to Tong Tong, he jumped up and hid behind my back. As he hid, he said to me in a trembling voice, "You summoned me," summoned the little snake. "What's the matter? If there's nothing else, I'll go back. I'll go back first." Looking at his submissive expression, I got angry. I raised my hand and slapped his head, pulling him to stand in front of me. Then, I told him my plan. "Do you have any way to communicate with the Qilin?" Hearing that I wanted to communicate with the snake spirit almost jumped up. His face paled and he said, "Grandpa. Grandpa Zhou, Master Zhou. Master Qilin, you should ask Tong Tong. Please be merciful and let me go, okay? No matter what you want me to do in the future, I won't say no." Although I didn't get along with this fellow, compared to the Kirin, I was much closer to him. I couldn't bear to see him scared like that. I could only nod in agreement. Seeing that I nodded, the snake spirit didn't even reply. With a speed that I had never seen before, he instantly turned back into his dragon form and hid behind my back. Since I couldn't count on the snake spirit, I could only call Tong Tong over and tell her about the matter. With Tong Tong's intimacy with the Kirin, she naturally wouldn't refuse. She immediately nodded in agreement and hopped back to the Kirin's side. She continued to whisper in his ear. It was obvious that she had gone to discuss the matter. Not long after, Tong Tong ran back and said to me embarrassedly, "Brother, the big dog told me that it's okay to let him take action. But he doesn't want you to stay here." "He doesn't want." "Yeah, he doesn't want." "Don't want what?" I felt strange. Why didn't he want me to stay here? After asking, Tong Tong stammered and said everything. "He said that he doesn't want to see you." "He told you not to stay here. If he's in a good mood, he'll do as you said." Tong Tong wouldn't lie. Even though he knew that the Chilin's words weren't anything good, under my questioning, he still told me everything. I was angry and didn't know what to say for a long time. Tong Tong saw that my expression wasn't right and hurried to say, "Brother, don't worry. I'll go and persuade him. Let's see if it works." Before I could reply, the Kirin snorted on the spot. He looked arrogant and didn't bother with me anymore. Tong Tong didn't bother with me either. Alright, a strong dragon couldn't suppress a local snake. Today, I had a favor to ask of this fellow, so I let him have his way. After all, he was something that had fallen from my body. If he wanted to deal with him, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. Today, I had an appointment with the Han family's heavenly master to go to the Han family's base. It was already late, so they were probably waiting for me there. Since the Kirin didn't want to see me, I would take this opportunity to go there. After making up my mind, I said to the fatty, "I'll leave this place to you. Be careful. Although the Kirin has always been docile, don't provoke him." The fatty didn't care if I stayed or not. He waved at me and said, "Third baby, don't worry. Leave this place to me." I nodded and reminded him to be careful and not to hurt himself. Then, I left the Holy Ji Palace and headed to the Han family's base. Today, at the Heavenly Grand Ritual, the Han family's heavenly master's attitude towards me was strange. At that time, I thought that he was afraid of my power. But now that I thought about it, no matter if it was in the Metaphysics Society or in the blessed heavenly abode, the power behind him was very strong. Especially now that he was backed by the Western Mountain Grotto, one of the top 10 heavenly abode. There was no need for him to be polite to me. Was it because of Officer Wang? Definitely not. Not to mention that the Wang family was getting weaker, even if they were at their peak. The Western Mountain Grotto behind them wasn't inferior to the Wang family by much. But why was it so? No matter how I thought about it, I still had my doubts about the old friend that fourth Uncle Han had mentioned. That person's status should be very high. The only reason why the Han family's heavenly master was so polite to me was because of that person. Chapter 609. I didn't know where the temporary residence of the Wanwu Grotto Heaven was, and I didn't want to bother to ask Wang Can. After pondering for a while, I decided to find a servant of the Wang family and ask him. Because of the change in the formation, Wang Can had issued some kind of order. After the All-Heaven competition, the servants of the Wanwu Grotto Heaven had changed their faces. Although they were still respectful to the guests, they seemed to be in a hurry, which made them feel a sense of urgency. They were like a high-speed machine, and each of them had to do their job diligently. If they could do less, they wouldn't do more. They were afraid that their mistakes would affect the operation of the machine, which could bring a destructive disaster to themselves or their families. When I finally found a servant of the Wang family and was about to ask him, my body suddenly trembled. I took it out and saw that it was the sound-transmitting talisman that Wang Can had given me. Ever since I had entered the Wanwu Grotto Heaven, no matter what I did, Wang Can could always sense it through the protective formation. Even if he couldn't come in person, Ah Fu or someone else would come to deliver his message, which made the talisman useless. However, the destruction of the formation had disrupted his arrangement. Let alone coming in person, even if he wanted to send someone to deliver the message, he wouldn't be able to find someone who was free. After I took out the talisman, the lines on it glowed. Eventually, a small white bead condensed at the center of the talisman. With my previous experience, I used a wisp of true essence and flicked my finger at the bead. The white bead turned into a white mist with words on it. I looked at it. Sure enough, it was a message from Wang Can. The message was short, but I could see Wang Can's urgency. First, he apologized to me, saying that he had been busy with the formation and had forgotten to accompany me to the Han family. He also said that he had arrived at the Dao Palace, but I had already left. He asked me where I was. I thought that he wouldn't care about the Han family's matter anymore. I didn't expect that he wouldn't forget about it, and he even came to find me. I condensed my true essence and prepared to write on the white mist. I wanted to tell him not to worry about me and to just take care of his own business. However, before I wrote, I remembered something and changed my mind. What happened to the Wang family's formation was not only related to the Wang family's plan, but also to my safety. I had to call Officer Wang here to ask about the situation. In addition, I just thought about asking the fatty to help me repair the formation. I'd better inform Officer Wang about this first. I wrote down the location and followed Officer Wang's instructions to condense the white mist into a ball. Then, I flicked my finger and sent the message. Soon, I received Officer Wang's reply. He asked me to stay here and wait for him. He would come soon. Since I wasn't sure how long it would take for Wang Can to get here, I stopped for a while. Since I had nothing to do, I picked up the talisman and studied it. This thing was very mysterious. Its function was similar to a text message on a mobile phone. It could quickly send text messages. It was not particularly appropriate to call it a voice transmission talisman. It was more appropriate to call it a communication talisman. Although technology was advanced in modern society, things like mobile phones relied on satellite signals. If you went to a remote place, your mobile phone would lose its function. Although the function of this voice transmission talisman was simple and couldn't be compared to a mobile phone, it was reliable. No matter where you went, as long as you had Taoist Qi, you could use it. I had been traveling all year round, and most of the places I went to were remote places. Although I had a mobile phone with me, no matter if it was the people in my shop or my friends or relatives, they couldn't contact me if something happened. If everyone around me had a voice transmission talisman, it would be much more convenient. Officer Wang had told me that the voice transmission talisman was also a precious item. I didn't want to trouble him too much, so I wondered if I could figure out the principle behind it and make a few of them myself. While studying the talisman, I waited for Officer Wang. Before I could finish studying it, Officer Wang came from afar. I put the talisman away and looked at him. Officer Wang looked hurried and panted. He walked toward me and cupped his hands to apologize to me. I was so busy that I forgot about our agreement. Please don't blame me. Looking at Officer Wang's appearance, I felt a little sorry for him. I've always felt that I've had a hard time on the road of cultivation, but from the beginning to the end, I've only worried about a few people. Wang Can is different. He needs to take care of the entire Wangu cave. Officer Wang might have experienced less life and death than me, but he was much more tired than me. Comparing the two, I was the one who was more relaxed. After Officer Wang calmed down a little, I waved my hand and said, "It's okay. How's the restoration of the formation going?" As I asked, I lifted my foot and continued to walk forward. Officer Wang followed me, and his face looked a little unsightly. In front of me, he didn't need to hide anything. He answered, "The situation isn't good. The formation is more complicated than I thought. This formation was set up by my family's ancestor. I thought that there would be a record of it, but after flipping through the scripture pavilion, all I found was an incomplete record. Even if I gathered all the people in the Wang family who were skilled in formations and asked them to do their best to restore that record without eating or drinking, it would still take them at least 2 months to do so. Moreover, I don't know how many parts of the record will be useful to the restoration of the formation. As for when the formation will be repaired, we can only leave it to God." Officer Wang's voice was getting lower and lower, which made my heart sink. I understood that it wasn't easy to repair the protective formation, which had been handed down from ancient times. But I didn't expect that it would be so difficult. I couldn't even figure out how to repair it. Previously, I was worried that Officer Wang wouldn't agree if I asked the fatty to help repair the formation. After all, the protective formation was related to the safety of the Wang family. If the fatty, an outsider, participated in it, Officer Wang would have scruples. However, as things had come to this, I couldn't care less. Although the Wang family was a family of cultivators that had been passed down from generation to generation, the Tao of formations wasn't very important. I guessed that few of the servants in the Wang family had learned about formations systematically. However, the fatty was different. He had been cultivating in the Zhanyan faction for a long time, and he had a profound attainment in formations. Even if he didn't understand the Wang family's protective formation, he could still help. At the very least, the fatty could help us repair the incomplete record. When I told him about it, Officer Wang didn't refuse. Instead, he looked excited and nodded. "I've heard of the Zhanyan faction in the secular world. Brother Lin is an outstanding disciple of the Zhanyan faction. Judging from his performance in the arena today, his attainment in formations is really good. With his help, we can definitely break the current deadlock. However, my relationship with Brother Lin..." At this point, Officer Wang stopped and looked a little embarrassed. He and the fatty didn't get along well, so even if he didn't say it, I could guess what he was going to say. He was just worried that the fatty wouldn't want to help. I smiled and comforted him. "Don't worry, fatty, don't be fooled by his usual fiendish appearance. In reality, he has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Since you don't have any doubts about this matter, just leave the rest to me." Officer Wang knew the relationship between me and the fatty. With my guarantee, the fatty wouldn't refuse. The worry on his face disappeared. After letting out a long sigh, he bowed respectfully towards me. "Saint, please tell Brother Lin that if Brother Lin is willing to lend a hand in this calamity of the Wang family, he will be the benefactor of our Wang family from today onwards. If you need my help in the future, Officer Wang won't refuse." I waved my hand and smiled. "We're on the same side. You don't need to be so polite." I didn't have many friends around me. Except for Dai Nanzhou, whom I'd met in the past 2 years, the fatty was the only other friend of the same age. Although Officer Wang called me a holy sage, I regarded him as a friend in my heart. Moreover, he had helped me a lot. If something happened to him, it was my duty to help him. The Han family's residence wasn't close to the Taoist palace, but Officer Wang was familiar with the way. He took me to the left and right paths, and after half an hour, we arrived at the place. When Officer Wang told me that the temporary residence of the Western Mountain Paradise was in front of us, I looked up and saw a valley in front of us. At this time, there weren't many people in the Western Mountain Paradise at the Heavenly Grand Ritual. Including the Han family's fourth uncle, there were only a dozen people in total. Although the valley wasn't big, it could accommodate hundreds of people. If the participants of the Heavenly Grand Ritual lived in such a big place, the Wanwu Paradise wouldn't be able to accommodate everyone even if it was thousands of miles away. I asked Officer Wang, "Why did the Western Mountain Paradise occupy such a big place in the valley? Is it the same for the other paradises?" Officer Wang's mood improved as he had some clues about the formation. While walking, he explained to me, "It's not the case for the other paradises. Only the geniuses of the 10 major paradises can enjoy such treatment. The 10 major paradises are different from the 36 minor paradises. They are the real dominating forces, and when they go out, they pay a lot of attention to their extravagance. This is especially true for the Western Mountain Paradise. They are well versed in the 6 principles of punishing demons, guarding against the ghost trials, and the 9 principles of wearing clothes, breathing exercises, storing notes, and misty clouds. Their inheritance has never been broken, and even their sect rules are the same as in ancient times. Although only a dozen people showed up at the meeting, this time, it wasn't them who played the leading role. It was the palace master. It's said that in ancient times, when the palace master of the Western Mountain Paradise went out, he would be accompanied by tens of thousands of people. They were in charge of the ceremonial guards, carriages, daily necessities, and so on. Although it's not as extravagant as it used to be, every time the palace master goes out, it's much more extravagant than the other paradises. This time, I heard that the palace master of the Western Mountain Paradise will go out for the heavenly grand ritual, so I arranged the biggest valley for them. Look at the mountain stream next to it. I planned to let them live there. However, this time, the Western Mountain Paradise is a little different from the past. Including the mysterious palace master, there are no more than 100 people. This valley is big enough to accommodate them all. We talked as we walked. Soon, we arrived at the entrance of the valley. I glanced into the distance. In the pavilion closest to me in the valley, a group of maids dressed in simple and unadorned clothing were carrying lanterns as they carefully moved. They seemed to be far more cautious than the servants of the Wang family. The palace master, I was startled. Could it be that the old friend, that 4th uncle of the Han family mentioned, was this palace master? When had I ever met such a character? After pondering for a while, I asked Wang Can, "Have you seen this palace master before?" Wang Can shook his head. "This palace master is very mysterious. Since he came to Wanwu Paradise, he hasn't contacted anyone. He didn't represent the Western Mountain Paradise at the Heavenly Grand Ritual either." Chapter 6:10. As for that old friend, my heart was in a mess. I had some vague guesses, but I couldn't be sure. Thinking of this, I suddenly felt troubled. The reason why I agreed to accompany Wang Can on this trip was that he could mobilize the Wanwu Grotto Heavens formation. Even if we encountered danger, he could protect us through the formation. But now, the formation was broken. Although it wasn't damaged to the point where it couldn't be used, its power was not as good as before. It was hard to say whether it could protect us or not. I was fine. I had encountered many dangers over the years, so I didn't mind going through one more time. But Wang Can was related to the fate of the entire Wanwu Grotto Heaven, so I had to be careful. I looked at Wang Can and wanted to persuade him not to get involved in this mess with me. But Wang Can understood my intention and immediately shook his head. He said to me, "The 9 Cauldrons family was born for the sage. How could we avoid conflict in front of the sage? It's our honor to die for the sage." Seeing that he was determined, I couldn't force him to go back. After a moment of silence, Wang Can comforted me. "Since we're here, we should take things as they come. With our strength, even if we encounter a celestial master with the Yang spirit consummation, we can still fight back. Moreover, this is our Wanwu Grotto Heaven, not their territory. Even if there's danger, we don't have to fight with our lives. As long as we can hold on for a while, we will have reinforcement." I was just a little worried. Whether the West City Grotto Heaven had evil intentions or not, we didn't need to scare ourselves. I nodded and patted Officer Wang's shoulder as a sign of agreement. At this moment, the closed door not far away was suddenly opened from the inside. Facing the light, a graceful figure came out. Then, she stood at the door and said to me, "Are you Zhou-Yi, Mr. Zhou? I'm Lu Wu, the palace master, and I'm here to wait for an old friend. Sir, please come with me." The woman was very young, no more than 25 or 26 years old. I could tell from her voice. I looked at her and was a little surprised. Of course, I wasn't shocked by her beauty, but by her cultivation. In the blessed enclave, there were many young celestial masters, including young Yang spirit celestial masters like Li Jihuan. But the problem was that those talented celestial masters were from the main branch of the Blessed Enclave. The woman in front of me was obviously a slave of the West City Grotto Heaven. It was unusual for a slave to be so young. It was the first time that I had seen such a young celestial master. Even Wang can a strange look at celestial master's face when he saw her. After sorting out my thoughts, I called out to Officer Wang and came before L.V. Wu. I answered softly, "I am Zhou Yi. I have kept Miss L.V. Wu waiting. Let's go." Then, I started to walk toward the valley behind her. However, L.V. Huang didn't want to lead the way. Instead, he frowned and stared at Officer Wang, asking, "May I know who this gentleman is?" He thought, he for Zhou. Of him. As I was about to introduce myself, Officer Wang stepped forward and introduced himself. "I'm Officer Wang, the master of Wangu Heavenly Abode, Mr. Zhou's friend." He can for of Wang was. Of Zhou, Can said. "I've heard that your palace master is an old friend of Mr. Zhou, so I want to make friends with you. Sorry to disturb you." Ken didn't say much, but his words were firm and neither servile nor overbearing. Not only did he state his identity, but he also warned Liu Can that this was the Wangu Grotto Heaven. If they had any ill intentions, they should weigh their own strength before making a decision. L.V. Huang was not easy to get along with. He sized Officer Wang up, returned the salute, and replied respectfully, "I've long heard that the current cave master of Wangu Grotto is the only genius among tens of thousands of people. Not neglecting both cultivation and family, he attained the cultivation of a celestial master at such a young age. Today I've seen that he really lives up to his reputation. Since you're the Wang family's master, Mr. Zhou's friend, and a distinguished guest of our West City Mountain, please come with me." After that, without waiting for Wang Can's answer, she turned around and led the way to the valley. Officer Wang and I looked at each other, then followed him. Along the way, we met many palace maids in the same attire as Liu Huang. However, most of them had their own work to do, so no one said anything. They just waited for us on the side of the road. After we passed, they went back to their work. I had seen such a scene before, but it was only in TV dramas. When some prominent figures walked in the middle of the road, the people with lower positions had to make way for them. I had thought that I would never encounter such a thing in my life, but today, I was walking in the middle of the road, making others give way to me. I had never met those palace maids before, but they were so respectful not because of me, but because of the woman leading the way, Liu Huang. As I thought about it, I became more curious about this woman. What was her status in the West City Mountain Cave? What was her relationship with the master? Shortly after, Liu Huang took us to a room and asked me to wait for a while. Then, she left. Only Can and I were left in the spacious room, looking at each other in dismay. However, we didn't wait for long. After a while, we heard footsteps coming from afar. The footsteps were heavy. It should be a man. Moreover, his footsteps were slow, as if he had something on his mind. I looked in the direction of the sound. Although I had guessed it, I couldn't help but be shocked when I saw the figure. Han Wennan. It was him. After a moment of shock, I quickly recovered. I had thought that he had died in the blood sacrifice well in the royal mausoleum of the Shang dynasty. But now that I thought about it, Lu Zhenyang was backed by a small blessed land in Lingshan, which was at the bottom of the 72 blessed lands. Even someone like him could survive in the royal mausoleum of the Shang dynasty, let alone Han Wennan. In terms of talent, Han Wennan wasn't inferior to Lu Zhenyang. In terms of background, in the secular world, the Han family was much stronger than the Liu family. As for the blessed lands behind them, Lingshan Cave was incomparable to the West City Mountain Cave. During the trip to the royal mausoleum of the Shang dynasty, no matter if it was the Han family or the West City Mountain Cave, since Han Wennan had gone there, he definitely wouldn't have sent him to his death. He must have had other plans. During the sacrifice, Lu Zhenyang had intended to take the Xianyuan sword for himself. But in the end, the Xianyuan sword was obtained by Nangong and he gave it to me. Thus, Lu Zhenyang had only obtained a magic weapon that Jiu Yu had used. At first glance, Lu Zhenyang's harvest from the sacrifice was not as good as mine. But later on, he obtained Chiyo's inheritance with the Chiyu axe and broke through to the complete Yang spirit realm. In comparison, I wasn't as good as Lu Zhenyang. What about Han Wennan? What did he gain from that sacrificial offering? It shouldn't be any worse than Chiyo's inheritance, right? Was his current identity as the palace master also because of this? While I was thinking, Han Wennan looked at me and stopped. After a while, he walked in front of me and said in a low, muffled voice, "Brother Zhou, long time no see. Long time no see." Han Wennan had survived the sacrifice. Of course, I was happy. After all, he was my friend. I trusted him, but he had helped the people of the Metaphysics Association to catch me. Although I had escaped from the king's tomb of the Shang dynasty safe and sound, it had always been a knot in my heart. I couldn't say that I hated him, but I wasn't that free and easy to forget all enmity with a smile. Long time no see. I chewed on the words and wondered from what angle he was talking to me from. Friend? I nodded and replied, "Yes, long time no see." After getting my answer, Han Wennan looked less embarrassed. He sat down on the bench in front of me. It seemed that I didn't want to talk to him, so he turned to Officer Wang and greeted him. "You must be the master of the Wangu Grotto Heaven, Mr. Wang, right? I'm Han Wennan from the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven." Before saying that, I wasn't sure about Han Wennan's identity. But since he could greet Officer Wang in the name of the heavenly abode in Xiqing City, he must be the mysterious palace master, the person in charge of the heavenly grand ritual and the dynamic year in Xiqing City. However, the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven had been passed down for a long time, and Han Wennan was just a branch family member. According to fourth uncle of the Han family, they had just returned to the main family. How could he be the palace master? Was it because of his talent? It wasn't possible. Officer Wang didn't know about my past with Han Wennan. However, from my reaction, he could guess something. Seeing that I didn't say anything, he said, "Palace Master Han, it's very nice to meet you. The West City Mountain Grotto Heaven specializes in punishing demons and ghosts. It has 9 palaces and 18 halls. May I know which palace you belong to?" Han Wennan glanced at me and said, "I'm the palace master of the soul-suppressing palace." Soul-suppressing palace? I didn't know the status of the soul-suppressing palace in the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven, but Officer Wang had taken over the family business since he was a child. He knew all the blessed lands like the back of his hand. After listening to him, I knew how important the soul-suppressing palace was in the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven. In order to protect the safety of important people, the blessed paradises would often use secret methods to leave a wisp of the soul of a direct descendant or an important person in the blessed paradises. This place was called the soul-suppressing land. However, the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven was a little different. All the people in the blessed lands had a wisp of their God's soul. They said they were there to protect the people, but their real purpose was to control the people's behavior. If someone violated the hierarchy or failed to complete the task assigned by the heavenly Grotto Heaven, the palace master of the soul-suppressing palace would punish him or her according to the rules. He could even decide the person's life or death. That was why the soul-suppressing palace had great power and was called the leader of all the palaces. Chapter 6:11. The Successor of Xiqing Mountain Cave. The impact of this news was no less than that of Lu Zhenyang's Yang Spirit Exceptional Realm. I had never expected that in just a few months, Han Wennan would become the successor of Xiqing Mountain Cave, one of the 10 great caves, from a young master of an ordinary family. Fourth Uncle Han was referring to Han Wennan when he said he was blessed by others, right? Although Han Wennan's talent was outstanding, the blessed enclave had no lack of people with extraordinary talent. Take LV Huang for example. Compared to Han Wennan, LV Huang's talent wasn't too far off. I could see with my insight power that Han Wennan was just at the Seal Celestial Master realm. In the blessed enclave, the Seal Celestial Master was the most basic power. With the power of a Seal Celestial Master, he had climbed to the position of successor of Shiqing Mountain Cave. What had Han Wennan done? Then, Officer Wang asked the question in my mind. Palace Master Han, you have such a high position at such a young age. Besides your talent, you must have contributed a lot to Shiqing Mountain, right? Han Wennan's expression was a bit complicated. After a wry smile, he shook his head and answered, I'm ashamed to say that I haven't contributed anything to the family. After I left Brother Zhou in the mausoleum of the Shang dynasty, I was lucky to escape. When I woke up, I was in Shiqing Mountain Cave and became the Palace Master of the Soul-Suppressing Palace. Although he was answering Officer Wang's question, he turned to look at me. There were too many strange things in the mausoleum of the Shang dynasty. After Lu Zhenyang sacrificed himself, he looked neither human nor ghost. As for Han Wennan, I thought he must have died in the blood sacrifice well. Since Lu Zhenyang had escaped, it was not surprising that Han Wennan survived. I nodded and asked him, Lu Zhenyang also appeared in the All-Heaven Grand Competition today. Brother Han and Lu Zhenyang entered the blood sacrifice well together in the Yinshang Royal Mausoleum. As far as I know, you two are the only people who came out of the blood sacrifice well. What happened to you in the well? On the surface, I just asked out of curiosity, but in fact, I stared at Han Wennan's expression. Nangong had told me that he had met Lu Zhenyang in the blood sacrifice well, but he hadn't mentioned Han Wennan. The blood sacrifice well was strange. It was possible that they had entered different spaces and hadn't met each other. However, I purposely asked. On one hand, I wanted to find out what had happened in the blood sacrifice well. On the other hand, I wanted to test Han Wennan to see if he was lying to me. Han Wennan has always been a straightforward person, and he doesn't have much enmity towards me. But just like when he attacked me in the underground cellar in Shenzhen, the family behind him stood on the opposite side of me. Han Wennan was also someone who cared a lot about his family's benefit. Thus, I couldn't tell if he was a friend or foe. I could only probe him a bit before making a decision. Han Wennan's expression remained the same. She shook her head and continued to answer, I went to investigate after the incident. Indeed, only Lu Zhenyang and I walked out of the blood sacrifice well. But strangely, when I entered the well, I didn't see Lu Zhenyang or anyone else. As for me, after I went down, my chest was pierced by an invisible force, and I fainted. Then, Han Wennan looked at me and smiled. Before I fainted, I lowered my head to look at my chest. It was almost the same as the huge wound that you left when you pierced Lu Zhenyang's heart in the Metaphysics Association's arena. At that time, I thought that I was going to die. Unexpectedly, when I woke up, not only did I not die, but I also had a fortuitous encounter. I frowned, but heaved a sigh of relief in my heart. I couldn't hear clearly what had happened in the blood sacrifice well from Han Wennan's words. But at least, he didn't lie to me about being with Lu Zhenyang. So, I deduced that Han Wennan didn't have any evil intentions, so I felt much more at ease. I nodded and ended the previous topic. In life, fortune and misfortune come hand in hand. It's normal. No matter what, as long as the outcome is good, it's a good thing. Let's not talk about the past. May I know why Palace Lord Han has invited me here today? When Han Wennan heard my question, he became silent. After pondering for a moment, he continued, I'm ashamed to say this. Brother Zhou and I are bosom friends. It's just that because of my standpoint, there was some misunderstanding between us. The reason I invited Brother Zhou here is to apologize to Brother Zhou and bury the hatchet. Secondly, I have something to discuss with Brother Zhou. Han Wennan was an upright person. Previously, at the Yinshang royal tomb, he stood on the side of his family and told me that good and evil cannot coexist. Then, he attacked me. Because of his attack, Nangong and I were captured. If it wasn't for the appearance of the evil sacrificial spirit, I might not have been able to keep my life. From this matter, Han Wennan and I should have had a deep grudge against each other. Apologizing was just child's play. But on the other hand, I knew that Han Wennan had attacked me because he had no other choice. If he had a choice, he would have made the same choice when he deliberately let me go in Shenzhen. For a moment I was silent. Seeing that I didn't speak, Han Wennan sighed and said, "At that time, our Han family encountered an unprecedented crisis. We used all of our family's power to ask the Metaphysics Association for a chance to bring me into the Yinshang royal tomb. The safety of the entire family was on my shoulders. I had no choice. I'm sorry, Brother Zhou." From Han Wennan, I learned that the Han family had to give the Metaphysics Association the half of the true dragon's vein that they had obtained from Shenzhen so that he could enter the Yinshang royal tomb smoothly. At that time, I had taken the true dragon's vein from the Metaphysics Association a long time ago. Although they had tried their best to find a new true dragon's vein, they hadn't found anything. Seeing that the gathering of the young phoenix was approaching, the Metaphysics Association couldn't care less about anything else. They could only agree to protect Han Wennan to enter the Yinshang royal tomb smoothly in exchange for the half of the true dragon's vein. According to Han Wennan, to enter the Yinshang royal tomb, not only did one have to be a celestial master, but there were also other stringent conditions. The Han family of Qinling couldn't do it. Even the Western mountain grottos couldn't do it due to certain restrictions. I was confused. If the Han family of Qinling couldn't do it, how did Zhang Canwen and I enter? After thinking for a while, I recalled the entrance and the few doors that we had encountered. In the beginning, Zhang Canwen had temporarily raised his cultivation to the Celestial Master realm to open the door. Later on, when Zhang Canwen couldn't open the door, I pushed it gently and it opened. I didn't think much about it then. But now that I thought about it, the reason I could open the door was mostly due to my unique background. After a long time, I had gotten used to the mysteries of my body. I didn't think too much about it. I just continued to ask Han Wennan, "The Han family went through a lot of trouble to get you such an opportunity. I can understand that you have a heavy burden on your body. However, I'm curious. The Han family paid a huge price, so they must want something big too. What's their purpose in letting you enter the Yinshang royal tomb?" Purpose? Han Wennan smiled bitterly. To be honest, I don't know what their purpose is. Before I left, my grandfather only told me that I had to get something from the Yinshang royal tomb. But no matter how I asked, he didn't tell me what it was. He only said that I would understand when the time came. I frowned. I couldn't tell if Han Wennan was telling the truth or not. Just as I was about to continue asking, Han Wennan took the initiative to speak. "In fact, until now I still don't know what they want. But the amazing thing is that after I went in, I did get that thing." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand to remove the clothes covering his chest, revealing his chest. He continued, "I just told you that my chest was pierced in the blood sacrifice well, and I became like Lu Zhenyang. But the reason I survived wasn't because my heart was deviated. It was because my heart had become like this." After lifting the clothes, what was supposed to be his chest was revealed. But when Han Wennan lifted the clothes on his chest, what was revealed was a ball of gentle five-colored light. The ball of light bloomed on his chest, as if it had replaced his heart. It pulsed along with his breathing. I stared at the ball of light carefully. Although I couldn't tell what it was, I felt an extremely vigorous vitality from it. After the light was revealed, the surrounding air seemed to be fresher. Every time I took a breath, I felt that my energy had increased a lot. Han Wen covered his clothes again and smiled bitterly. Until now, I still don't know what it is. But because I got this thing, I knew that the Han family that I had always been proud of was just a branch of the Mountain Heavens cave in the West City. It was also because of this thing that our Han family not only survived the crisis, but also returned to the Mountain Heavens cave in the West City. And I also got the position of the Palace Master of the Soul Calming Palace. Han Wen'nan's voice seemed to be a little sorrowful. After saying that, the room fell into silence again. I didn't know what the five-colored light was, but it could make the Han family return to the Mountain Heavens cave in the West City, and it could make Han Wen'nan sit on the position of the Palace Master of the Soul Calming Palace. Naturally, it wasn't a simple thing. But judging from Han Wen'nan's expression, his days in the Mountain Heavens cave in the West City were not as he wished. But in life, how many people could have everything they wanted? I sighed and opened my mouth. I wanted to say forgive, but the word forgive was said by a man like me, and it was said to another man. It was a little weird. After a moment of silence, I wanted to lighten the atmosphere, so I changed the topic and joked. Brother Han, you said that there was another thing that you asked me to come here for. Why didn't you say anything all of a sudden? Don't tell me you want me to guess it myself? Hearing that, Han Wen'nan seemed to understand what I meant. He smiled and the haze on his face disappeared. He also joked with me. Then Zhou, why don't you make a guess? How about this, if you guess correctly, the Mountain Heavens cave in the West City will not be enemies with Wanwu cave in the All-Heaven Grand competition. Moreover, we will do our best to help Wanwu cave keep its position as the champion. What do you think? His words shocked me. Among the 10 great caves, the Mountain Heavens cave played an important role. The Mountain Heavens cave in the West City was ranked 3rd. In terms of strength, it was comparable to the Wanwu cave when Wang Can's father was still alive. Now, it was a peak existence and had a very high chance of fighting for the position of champion. Han Wen'nan gave up the title of champion just because of a few simple words? He even wanted to help Wanwu cave? I felt that it was absurd. Previously, when Lu Zhenyang said that he would give up the title of champion, I could understand. After all, spiritual mountain blessed land only relied on him. He had the full power to represent spiritual mountain blessed land. Moreover, he did have something to ask of me. However, Han Wen'nan's position in the Mountain Heavens cave in the West City was quite awkward. Yet, he didn't hesitate to give up the title of champion, which was really suspicious. After pondering for a while, I could only think of one explanation. Han Wen'nan's request was also very important, and it was possible that the Mountain Heavens cave was behind it. I never doubted Han Wen'nan's character, but at the same time, I never doubted his loyalty to his family. From his words, I was worried that the Han family, or rather, the Mountain Heavens cave in the West City, had something to do with me. Next to me, Wang Can looked at me with bright eyes, full of hope. With the support of the Mountain Heavens cave in the West City and Lu Zhenyang's guarantee, it was almost certain that the Wang family would be able to keep the title of champion in the All-Heaven Grand competition. In his position, he naturally hoped that I could guess it quickly. However, I knew that it wasn't that simple. My original intention to tease him also disappeared. I ignored Wang Can's gaze and looked at Han Wen'nan solemnly. I shook my head. Something that can make the Mountain Heavens cave in the West City pay so much must be very important. I can't guess it. Brother Han, please enlighten me. Han Wen'nan saw that my expression wasn't right and was slightly stunned. Then, he reacted and smiled wryly. Zhou, don't misunderstand. This has nothing to do with the Han family or the Mountain Heavens cave in the West City. It's purely a personal request of mine. Personal request? I was even more confused. I still frowned and looked at Han Wen'nan. He continued to explain, Although the All-Heaven Grand Competition is related to the distribution of the true dragon vein, the Mountain Heavens Cave in the West City didn't have strict requirements for me. I just need to keep my position as one of the 10 great caves. So, we don't want to fight for the title of champion. Naturally, we can help the Wanwu Cave. Don't think too much. After saying that, he didn't wait for me to guess and simply told me what he wanted. He looked at me with bright eyes and said solemnly, "It's about an old friend. That person is also a friend of yours. She's from the Metaphysics Society. Yi Piampian." Hearing him say that name, my eyes froze. Chapter 6:12. I hadn't heard Yi Piampian's name for a long time. I hadn't seen her for many years since we parted at the back mountain of the Metaphysics Association. But it didn't mean that I had forgotten about her. When Lu Xening destroyed my meridians, it was Yi Piampian who took care of me for 2 months. When my witchcraft cultivation was exposed, it was Yi Piampian who sent me away. When I learned from Yang Kaichen that Yi Piampian was imprisoned, I planned to go to Penglai Island to save her. But I soon hesitated. Yi Piampian was the vice president of the Metaphysics Association and the disciple of the old president. In the Metaphysics Association, she was second only to one and above all. If I hadn't appeared, her life would have been peaceful. But because of me, she was imprisoned. Even if I went to save her, what could I do? Her relationship with the old president couldn't be severed, and her relationship with the Metaphysics Association couldn't be severed either. Staying in Penglai Island was the most suitable place for her. Of course, this was what I thought in the past. When I saw the woman who looked exactly like her appear from the bronze coffin in the Yinshang royal tomb, I knew that things weren't as simple as I had imagined. Without a doubt, Yi Piampian was one of the keys to the gate of immortality. In that case, all of my speculations were wrong. Yi Piampian's original life wasn't as peaceful as I had imagined. The relationship between her and the old president suddenly became unpredictable. After understanding this, I made up my mind to save Yi Piampian no matter what. But I also knew that since she was the so-called key, the Metaphysics Association would keep a close eye on her and wouldn't give me a chance easily. According to my original plan, I would go to Penglai Island when I could defeat Yang God's celestial master. Whether or not I could save Yi Piampian, I had to give it a try. However, I didn't expect that Han Wennan would suddenly mention this matter before I could take any action. I didn't know Han Wennan's plan, so I hesitated and was about to ask. Han Wennan spoke first and said directly to me, "You should know that Yi Piampian was detained. To be honest, I planned to save her." Save? I was stunned for a moment, then realized that Han Wennan seemed to have the intention to pursue Yi Piampian in the Metaphysics Society. Keeping silent for a while, my mind was in a mess. I said to Han Wennan in a deep voice, "I also want to go and save her. But we need to think about it." Han Wennan nodded. "That's right. We need to give this matter further thought." In fact, when the Han family used the half of the true dragon's vein to exchange for the opportunity to enter the Yinshang royal mausoleum, I added a condition, which was to let Yi Piampian go. However, they refused without a second thought. At first, I thought they couldn't interfere with Yi Piampian's business because of their relationship with the president. It was not until later, when I walked out of the mausoleum of the Shang dynasty, that I vaguely heard something. Yi Piampian seemed to be very important, so the Metaphysics Association didn't let her go. Listening to Han Wennan, I couldn't help but smile wryly. Back in the Yinshang royal mausoleum, Han Wennan and Lu Zhenyang had entered the blood sacrifice well first, so they didn't see the girl who looked exactly like Yi Piampian coming out of the bronze coffin. So, I didn't know much about this matter. But I knew that the Metaphysics Association was fighting for Yi Piampian. How could they let her go? Before I opened my mouth, Han Wennan continued, "After I got the power of the soul-suppressing palace, I planned to use brute force to save Yi Piampian. But as soon as I had this idea, the cave master stopped me. He didn't directly stop me from saving Yi Piampian, but he sent me a message. Han Wunan suddenly stopped. From his expression, I could tell that the message from the cave master wasn't something good. But since it was related to Yi Piampian, I couldn't help but ask, what did he mean? Han Wunan glanced at me and then at Officer Wang. Then, he continued, the power of the Metaphysics Association can't be defeated even with the power of the mountain grotto in West City. After listening to his words, not only me, but also Officer Wang, who was standing next to me, wore an incredulous expression. Not to mention Officer Wang, even I know that the whole secular world is just a pile of ants in front of the blessed enclave. Even the smallest branches of the 72 blessed enclaves can cause great changes in the secular world with a simple move, let alone an old enclave like Mount Shiqing. However, from what Han Wunan had said, it seemed to me that the Metaphysics Association was just a small organization. Even the Western Mountain Grotto Heaven didn't dare to go against it. It was indeed incredible. I looked at Han Wunan. He wore a solemn face and didn't look like he was joking at all. Before I had come into contact with the Blessed Enclave, let alone the Metaphysics Association, even the Lu family was a giant in my eyes. However, ever since I'd witnessed how the Blessed Enclave treated the Celestial Master as a slave, the impact that the Lu family and the Metaphysics Association had on me wasn't as strong anymore. I'd even thought that they were just SOSO. However, Han Wunan's words had completely messed up my perception. How powerful was the Metaphysics Association that could make the mountain grotto in West City avoid it? Ever since I had come into contact with the Metaphysics Association, I felt that it was just a pool of spring water that could drown people, but it couldn't cause any big waves. It was also because of this that they were restrained by the Lu family during the Young Phoenix gathering. The more I thought about it, the more I felt that it was impossible. The Metaphysics Association couldn't be that powerful. If the Metaphysics Association was really that powerful, how could I have stolen the true dragon vein? If the Metaphysics Association was really that powerful, how could I have escaped from the hands of a dozen celestial masters? But when I recalled what had happened in the Metaphysics Association, those messy things seemed to be connected by a certain line. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. The reason why I was able to take away the true dragon's vein of the Metaphysics Association was because of the old president's instructions. The reason why I was able to escape from the encirclement of dozens of celestial masters was also because the old president didn't intervene. The more I thought about it, the more terrified I felt. I always felt that those things that seemed like flukes to me before were all inevitable. And those inevitable things were all done by the old president who had never shown himself. Thinking about it, the one who could make the mountain grotto in West City avoid it must be the old president. I looked at Han Wunan and asked softly, "Is it because of the old president?" Han Wunan looked into the distance, and his expression could not be seen clearly. He only nodded and said, "Brother Zhou, you don't have to worry too much. Although the old president is powerful, he is only one person. Now we have the two great helpers, the West City Mountain Cave and the Wanwu Cave. Although it is not convenient to challenge the old president openly, it is not impossible to save Piampian if we plan well. I asked you to come here this time to ask for your forgiveness and to see what you think about Piampian's matter." My mind. I was shocked by the old president's matter. Listening to Han Wunan's question, my mind was in a mess. After a long silence, I didn't answer his question. Instead, I asked Han Wunan about his plan. As he said, he came here to discuss with me, and we needed to work on the specific plan together. Due to the pressure from the old president, we talked for a long time, but we couldn't come up with a proper plan. After all, there were too many problems and uncertainties. In the end, we just finalized a general plan. Since it was getting late, we had to say goodbye. Before we left, Han Wennan gave me a sound-transmitting talisman and told me that he would contact me as soon as he had a good plan. Then, he sent Officer Wang and me away. On the way out, the palace maid named LV Wu came out of nowhere. After sending us out of the canyon, she said goodbye and went back. On the way back, I was lost in thought. Years ago, I had asked Yang Kaichen to help me inquire about Yipiampian. However, Shenzhen was too far from the headquarters of the Esoteric Society, and Yang Kaichen didn't have many connections. In the end, I had to ask Zhang Kanwan to find out that Yipiampian was imprisoned in a cold place. Later, I met Nangong in the royal mausoleum of the Shang dynasty. He told me that it was on a small island in Penglai, Yantai, Shandong. He also said that Yipiampian had been arranged there. At that time, I didn't know who had arranged for her to go there. But now, I realized that it must be the old president's arrangement. When I talked with Han Wennan just now, he told me about the situation, which made me even more confused. Since it was the old president's arrangement, how did Nangong know about it? He even brought back her handkerchief from that island. The more I thought about it, the more complicated it became. When I thought about that handkerchief, I couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Over the past 2 years, although I had thought about rescuing Yipiampian many times, I hadn't taken any action. Only Han Wennan contacted me immediately after he got the news and prepared to take action. From this, it could be seen that he liked Yipiampian far more than he liked me. But he didn't know about the handkerchief, and I didn't know whether I should tell him or not. Speaking of the handkerchief, I thought of those words again. May your heart be like mine. My heart had been taken away by Lao Ai long ago. How could it be the same as hers? Now, Lao Ai was controlled by the so-called Heavenly Tao. She could only see me once every 6 months. Although the way I had interacted with Lao Ai before, she had been free at that time. Thinking of her being controlled by someone else, I felt very upset. With my current strength, it is certainly impossible for me to save Lao Ai. When I was in the Fire God Temple, my uncle had told me that if I wanted to save Lao Ai, I had to become stronger and stronger, until I could defeat the great Tao of heaven and master the rules of this world by myself. As I was thinking about what had happened between me, Han Wennan, and Yipiampian, as well as what had happened between me and Lao Ai, I didn't say anything on the way. Although Wang Can didn't know what I was thinking, he obviously knew that it wasn't the time to interrupt. When we were about to reach the Taoist palace, he saw that I was in a better mood. He stopped me and said, "Although I don't know how powerful the old president is, as long as the holy sage has an order, our Wang family will do our best to help you rescue Miss Piampian from the Metaphysics Association." After going through so many things, the relationship between Officer Wang and me, or rather Wanwu Grotto Heaven and me, had become much closer. Therefore, when I discussed with Han Wennan, I didn't avoid him. Officer Wang also knew about our current plans. Even without Wang Can's words, I knew that he would definitely help me. However, I still felt a sense of warmth in my heart when this was something that I had already expected to be mentioned by someone who had caught me off guard. I nodded and softly replied, "Yeah. You don't need to worry too much about the matter of repairing the formation. I'll convince the fatty." Officer Wang looked around the palace, but he didn't see the fat man. He bowed to me again and said goodbye to me. "It's getting late. I think Brother Lin has already gone to bed. I won't disturb you any longer. Holy Sage, you should also rest early. You still need to worry about the All-Heaven competition and persuading Brother Lin. I will take my leave now." After Wang Can left, I returned to the Taoist palace. The fatty and the others had indeed gone to bed. It seemed that they had made some progress in repairing the formation. The Qilin was sitting at the entrance of the Taoist palace, as if he was waiting for me. However, when he saw me, he put on an aloof expression, raised his head, turned around, and ran into the palace. Chapter 6:13. The next morning, after I got up, someone brought me breakfast. I asked Fatty and Tong Tong to join me. After breakfast, we went to the venue of the All Heaven Grand competition. Today was the third round of the All Heaven Grand competition. According to the rules, Fatty and I had to participate in the competition. However, Officer Wang was busy dealing with the formation yesterday, so he didn't tell me who our opponents were. Anyway, it wasn't important. With Ah Fu and my strength, we wouldn't meet any opponents before the fifth round. We just needed to stay calm. After walking for a while, Fatty asked about what had happened last night. I roughly told him what had happened last night. Fatty shouted, "Third baby, you have to count me in. Yi Piampian and I are good friends. Let's go together." I nodded, agreeing with him. Although we hadn't decided when the plan would be carried out, we would have to wait until Lu Zhenyang and I were done. At that time, Fatty would have the demon refining gourd. Even if we ran into the old president on the island and our plan was exposed, as long as we hid in the demon refining gourd, the old president wouldn't be able to find us no matter how powerful he was. After talking about this matter, I asked about the formation experiment. This time, the Fatty didn't say anything and showed a defeated expression. Tong Tong chuckled and told me the whole story. It turned out that not long after I left, Fatty had finished setting up the formation. He shrank in the protective shell of the array formation and said to Tong Tong with a proud look on his face, "Tong Tong, you have to listen carefully to what Brother Tiger is going to say next, and then I will tell it to you word for word. Ha, that big dog next to you. The formation I just set up is the one researched by our Zhanyan sect's ancestor. It's called the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation. Once it's activated, yellow smoke will spread for 300 miles, and its defensive power will be as endless as the Yellow River. Back then, the elder ancestor had set up this formation when he was at the early stage of the Heavenly Master realm. He had stopped 3 grand cultivators who were at the peak of the Seal realm. One of them had accidentally barged in and had his cultivation base cut off, cutting off his path of cultivation. Tell Doggy to be careful. If my cultivation is cut off by my formation, don't blame me." Tong Tong was simple-minded and could not tell how much of the Fatty's words were true and how much was false, so he told Yu Qilin everything. Unexpectedly, when the Qilin heard this, it only raised its head and snorted. It raised its 4 hooves and created a cloud out of thin air. It slowly rushed into the Fatty's formation. Fatty was delighted to see this. He formed a seal with his long hands and activated the array. He spoke to the incoming Qilin again. "Be careful, big doggy. Although I'm a perfected glorious consciousness cultivator, this is the first time I've set up this Nine Bends Yellow River array. I'm not familiar with it. If I can't control it and accidentally cripple your cultivation, don't cry in front of me." Tong Tong said that the matrix was indeed magical. After Fatty activated it, yellow smoke was really produced. Although it was a terrifying 300 miles, it still filled half the hall of the Doctrine Palace. The Qilin's competitive spirit was aroused by the Fatty, and he no longer held back. He suddenly sped up and turned into a ball of white light under the auspicious cloud, directly rushing into the yellow smoke. In less than 3 seconds there was a crisp sound in the hall. Then, the yellow smoke slowly dispersed, revealing the Fatty who was being stepped on by the Qilin. Tong Tong chuckled and stuck his tongue out at the Fatty. Even I couldn't help but laugh. The Fatty's face turned red and he said unhappily, "This time, it's my fault for not being well prepared. It's not that the formation is bad. Give me some more time. When I've fully grasped the Nine Bends Yellow River array, I'll try it again. That doggy definitely won't be able to break my formation." Hearing that, I stopped laughing. Originally, I had asked the Fatty to set up the formation to test the Qilin's power. The results of the experiment were out. It had indeed proven that the Qilin had the ability to break the formation, but it had also aroused the Fatty's competitive spirit. I didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. However, from what the fatty had just done, the 9 Bends Yellow River array at its peak might really be able to spread the yellow smoke for 300 miles. With his cultivation at the initial stage of the Seal Heavenly Master realm, it was possible for him to resist against 3 Seal Heavenly Masters at the peak stage. If he could grasp it quickly and master it while the Heavenly Grand Ritual was in progress, he would be invincible in the blessed Grotto Heavenlands in the competition of the glorious past realm. I looked at the fatty as I pondered. Just as I was about to comfort him, Tong Tong interrupted. She pulled my hand and carefully asked, "Brother, did I make Brother Fat Tiger angry?" The fatty's behavior was a little extreme. I stopped and pinched Tong Tong's small face. "No, Brother Fat Tiger isn't angry with you. He's angry with himself." The fatty also noticed that Tong Tong wasn't right. He hurriedly stopped and adjusted his expression. "Don't listen to your brother's nonsense. Brother Fat Tiger is angry with you. Quick, come here and give Brother Fat Tiger a kiss. He won't be angry anymore." Tong Tong hid behind me and stole a glance at the fatty. She said, "You should be angry. Brother said that men and women shouldn't touch each other." Then, she said goodbye to me and ran back to the jade bracelet as if she was running away. This time, I couldn't hold it any more and burst out laughing. We chatted along the way. Not long after, I and the fatty arrived at the competition venue. Before we entered the main entrance, Officer Wang stopped us. "Officer Wang, what's the matter? Did something happen to the formation?" He shook his head and pulled the fatty and me to a place with fewer people. Then, he stopped and answered, "It's not about the formation. It's about Brother Lin." "About the fatty?" I slightly frowned. Although the fatty was careless, he had never had any conflicts with the people of the blessed and heavenly land. If I had to name someone, it would be Officer Wang. What had happened to the fatty that made him wait for us outside the venue so early in the morning? The fatty was even more surprised than I was. He took a step forward and asked Officer Wang, "What happened to me?" Officer Wang looked at the fatty and said respectfully, "Actually, it's not a big deal. Brother Lin, your performance in the competition yesterday was too dazzling, so our opponent today was suddenly changed." I finally understood. Fatty's performance in the arena yesterday was indeed quite spectacular. Since the Heavenly Grand Ritual had been passed down until now, it was unknown how many times it had been used. However, it could be assumed that no one had done what Fatty did, using the power of the array to exhaust his opponent's Qi of Tao to win. It was difficult not to remember. After hearing Officer Wang's words, I began to worry about the fatty. Although the formation was magical, it took time to set it up. If the fatty couldn't grasp the right timing in the arena and lost the match, it would be troublesome. Since Fu wasn't sure if he could win, the fatty and I had to win every match. We couldn't slack off. Otherwise, it would be hard to say whether we could keep our first place or not. Apparently, the fatty had seen through our worries. He patted his chest and said proudly, "What are you afraid of? So what if they change their opponent? At most, they will be prepared for the formation I set up yesterday. However, I have many formations. If worse comes to worst, I will change my formation today. Let's see if they can prepare for it in advance." Officer Wang opened his mouth, as if he wanted to persuade the fatty. However, after thinking about it for a while, he didn't say anything. He took out an envelope and a cloth bag and handed them to me. He said, "This envelope contains the information about our opponent today. I should have given it to the sage last night, but I forgot about it. I'm giving it to the sage now. I hope it won't affect the sage's performance in the competition. As for this cloth bag..." Officer Wang suddenly stopped and glanced at the fatty out of the corner of his eye. Then, he said, "The sage should understand what I mean. I still have something to do with the formation, so I'll leave now." After saying that, he told Fatty to be careful and left in a hurry. I looked at Officer Wang's back and then at the two things in my hand. I couldn't help but sigh inwardly. No wonder Officer Wang was able to keep such a big family in order. He was really meticulous and meticulous. Although he didn't say why he wanted to give me the cloth bag, from his reaction, I guessed it was about right. It was for the fatty. He knew that he didn't have a good relationship with the fatty. If he gave it to the fatty, not only would the fatty not accept it, but he would also think that the fatty looked down on him, which would make their relationship even worse. That was why he gave the cloth bag to me and asked me to give it to him. Fatty and I are good friends. If I give it to Fatty, he will definitely accept it, but he will definitely not reject it directly. I opened the bag and saw that it was full of talismans. Moreover, the lowest grade talisman was a scarlet talisman. There were more than 10 silver talismans and 1 gold talisman. Talismans are commonly used by low-level cultivators. They consume very little Dao Qi, but they are very powerful. When I was in the earthly adept realm, I did not have any Dharma treasures. I relied on these talismans to escape from many strong enemies. Even though the fatty and the others' methods were heaven-defying, able to see through the mysteries of heaven, there was still an extremely clear flaw, which was that their offensive methods were relatively lacking. If they encountered some powerful cultivators, they could only retreat. However, with these talismans in hand, even if the opponent was a celestial master, he should be able to hold on for some time. The talismans that Wang Can had prepared were also quite convenient. Most of them were defensive talismans. If he used several of them in a row, it would buy enough time for the fat man to set up the formation. After seeing the talismans, I tied the cloth bag and put it in the fatty's hand. As for me, he tore open the envelope, took out the information inside, and began to study it. Chapter 6:14. I opened the envelope and saw 3 words on it: San Wang Well. The San Wang Well wasn't one of the top 10 heavenly caves, but one of the 36 small heavenly caves. It ranked 23rd. Although this ranking was also considered to be in the front, compared to Wangu Paradise, it could only be considered to pale in comparison. What method did they use to make Wang Can so nervous that he even took out the golden talisman? The San Huang Well was located in Xianyan Town, Ruyan City, Wenzhou, Zhejiang Province, at the foot of Daluo Mountain. It was where Taoist Master Baocha ruled. Daluo Mountain was called Spring Mountain in ancient times. The name of Daluo Mountain began at the end of the 5th dynasty. According to ancient legends, Xianyuan, the Yellow Emperor, had cultivated here. After he achieved the Tao, a dragon came to greet him, and the Yellow Emperor ascended on the dragon. Therefore, there were historical sites such as the Huangdi Well, the Huangdi Pond, the Milky Way, the Dragon Beard Waterfall, the Immortal Ascension Rock, and the Alchemy Platform. Because Xianyuan ranked 3rd among the 3 emperors, it was also called the San Huang Well. Apart from that, there was nothing special about the background of the San Huang Well. The Yellow Emperor was the leader of the ancient Huaxia tribal alliance. He was the co-ruler of the Huaxia people in ancient times. He was also the head of the 5 emperors, and he was respected as the first ancestor of China. It was said that he was the son of Xiaodian and Fubao. His original surname was Gongsun, but he later changed his surname to Ji, so he was called Ji Xianyuan. He lived in Xianyuan Hill and was called the Xianyuan family. He built his capital in Yoxiong, so he was also called the Yoxiong family. Some people called it the Hongdi family. If the Yellow Emperor had really cultivated here, then the inheritance of the 3 emperors' well must have been extraordinary. With such a powerful background, the San Huang Well didn't need other legends to embellish it. It was enough to stand out among the other heavenly caves. Since this legend appeared in the envelope that Wang Can gave me, it was self-evident that it was true. However, with such a powerful background, how could the San Huang Well become a small heavenly cave? It should be one of the top 10 heavenly caves, right? Curious, I continued to read. As a blessed cave, the inheritance of the San Huang Well naturally had a long history. It was even better than the Wangu Cave and the West City Mountain Cave. In its history there were indeed many great figures. Even the position of the top of the 10 caves had been taken more than 10 times. It was just that hundreds of years ago, the San Huang Well Cave was tragically stolen by an elder, causing a gap in the inheritance. This caused the strength of the San Huang Well to weaken day by day. It fell again and again from the position of the top to the present. How could a blessed land be stolen? I was slightly startled. It seemed that the elder was an extraordinary person. However, what shocked me even more was that such an amazing person seemed to have disappeared after stealing the inheritance. His name never appeared in the blessed lands again. Suppressing my surprise, I continued to read. Finally, I found something that made Wang Qin nervous: the Xuanda Wonderland. I didn't know why the Xuanda Wonderland had joined forces with the San Huang Well Cave. They had sent 2 of their best men to the San Huang Wells team. One of them was a Seal Celestial Master, and the other was an Earthly Master at the History Glory realm. No wonder Wang Can was so nervous. Although the Xuanda Wonderland was only one of the 36 minor heavenly caves, it ranked first and was only one step away from the top 10 heavenly caves. I had experienced their secret sword cultivation techniques many times. Their fighting capacity was second to none in the same realm, so Wang Qin couldn't help but be nervous. Although it was strange, it made sense in light of the Xuanda Wonderland's behavior. Zhao Hao was an ambitious and insatiable man. At the previous banquet, he had spoken ill of Wang Can. Under his control, the Xuanda Grotto Heaven was naturally ambitious. This time, he just wanted to pull the Wanwu Grotto Heaven down from its position as the leader. Like the Wanwu Wonderland, the Xuanda Wonderland had been going downhill. There were not many celestial masters with yang spirit cultivation, so they couldn't afford to split their manpower. However, there were many Seal Celestial Masters and Earthly Masters of History Glory. Coupled with the advantage of sword cultivation, any Seal Celestial Master or Earthly Master of History Glory he sent would have an absolute advantage in the same realm. If they encountered ordinary Seal Celestial Masters or Earthly Masters of History Glory, they would have a 70% chance of winning. If I'm not wrong, if the 2 people that Zhao Hao sent out could kill me and the fatty in the 3rd round, allowing the 3 Emperor Well Paradise to smoothly enter the top 16, then in the next round, Zhao Hao would be able to control 2 spots in the top 16. Although the 2 sides wouldn't meet directly in the next round, Zhao Hao could use this spot to cooperate with the other caves and give up a spot to advance. Then, he could use the power of the other caves to strengthen himself, so that the Xuanda Wonderland could enter the top 8 smoothly and ensure its spot in the top 10 cave. Even if they couldn't win the top position in the end, after entering the top 10 caves, the benefits were obvious. At the very least, the Xuanda Wonderland would control one more true dragon vein, so that its strength would increase a little. In the next Heavenly Grand Ritual, it would have the ability to compete for the top spot. Of course, if his plan were to fail, San Huang's Well would not be able to clinch the victory with his support. Xuanda's Grotto Heaven would not suffer any loss. On the contrary, they would be able to figure out my and the fatty's abilities and use them as a bargaining chip. In the next round of the competition, they would be able to strike a deal with Wanwu Grotto Heaven's opponent. Although the other caves didn't have a big grudge with the Wanwu Wonderland, at this time, even a little good news was worth fighting for. After all, it was related to the top 10 caves. No force would give up easily. Therefore, to the Xuanda Wonderland this was definitely a profitable deal. To be able to think of such a method, it proved that Zhao Hao wasn't stupid. Actually, this kind of deal had happened in the previous battles. Previously, the Changshan Wonderland had admitted defeat to the LV Liang Blessed Land that was represented by Lin Shui before they went on stage. However, what puzzled me was that the San Wang well didn't raise any opinions in this deal. Could it be that the deal between them was really that simple? I didn't know why, but I felt that the deal between the Schwanda Wonderland and the San Wang well was far from being as simple as it seemed. However, before I could figure it out, I was shocked by the fatty's voice. While I was reading the letter, this fellow opened the cloth bag and looked at the red and silver talismans. He said while drooling, as the saying goes, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. This time, I really believe it. Didn't the Wang family's brat say that his family was going downhill? Why did he suddenly take out so many silver talismans? Wait, there's even a gold talisman. Speaking of this, the fat man took a deep breath and tried to make himself look calm. Then he went on to say, "My master values a silver talisman more than anything else." How could Officer Wang take out a golden talisman? Did he encounter a strong enemy? I nodded, and told him the contents of the envelope, along with my own conjectures. After listening to me, the fatty wasn't as careless as he used to be. He pondered for a while and asked, "Is the sword cultivator of the Schwanda Wonderland really that strong?" I nodded, then told him about how I was ambushed by Zhao Hao, and how I escaped with Ah Fu's help in the end. When Fatty heard that there was such a thing, his face immediately turned hostile. How could Schwanda Grotto Heaven be so despicable? How about this, third brother, give me a few of these talismans. When we get to the arena later, I'll teach that Schwanda Grotto Heaven a good lesson. In this world, the strong preyed on the weak, not to mention cultivators. For the sake of wealth, companions, techniques, and treasures, how many people could be honest and upright? Although I was angry about Zhao Hao's sneak attack, I was the one who should be angry. I wasn't strong enough, so I fell into his trap. Therefore, compared to the fatty's anger, I was much calmer. I was even a little happy. I thought that I would have to spend a lot of effort to persuade the fatty to take those talismans, but he offered to take a few of them, which saved me a lot of trouble. However, the talismans that Officer Wang had given me were meant for the fatty. If he only took a few, what should I do with the rest? After thinking for a while, I handed the cloth bag to the fatty and said, "With my current cultivation, these talismans won't help me much. When you fight, you should focus on formations, and the most important thing to arrange them is time. I've checked them, and these talismans are mainly for defense. They can buy you a lot of time in a fight. You can take them." The fatty glanced at me. He wanted to make some concessions, but I used my cultivation and the Xian Yuan sword as an excuse to stop him. The fatty knew that my means weren't simple, and I had the Xian Yuan sword, an ancient divine weapon. No matter how strong the sword cultivators from the Schwanda Wonderland were, they wouldn't be able to win against me. That was why he agreed. Then, I took out some talismans from the cloth bag and introduced them to the fatty one by one, so that he wouldn't be confused when fighting against the enemy. After seeing that he had memorized them, we turned around and walked to the venue. In each round of the All-Heaven competition, half of the teams would be eliminated, but this didn't prevent the other teams from coming to watch the competition. Therefore, even though only the 32 blessed paradises were qualified to participate in the next competition, almost all the people from the 10 great paradises, the 36 small paradises, and the 72 blessed lands were present. When the fatty and I arrived at the viewing platform, Ah Fu and the others from the Wanwu paradise had already arrived. When Ah Fu saw me and the fatty, he stood up to greet us, but someone beat him to it. It was Zhao Hao. He was still wearing the black Taoist robe he had worn at the banquet, and there was an unknown ancient sword on his back. He stood in front of the fatty and me, his triangular-shaped eyes glancing at us. He teased, "Officer Wang's taste is getting worse and worse. He's bringing in anyone to make up the numbers." Seeing that the competition was about to enter the final stage, Zhao Hao couldn't sit still anymore and took the initiative to provoke us. However, this person had the right to be arrogant. At such a young age, he had reached the complete seal realm. He was even stronger than Officer Wang and me. As I was about to retort, the fatty took a step forward and stood in front of Zhao Hao and me. He said, "You're Zhao Hao, right? Triangular-shaped eyes, arched eyebrows. You look like you, but you're still the cave master. It's no wonder that the Schwanda Wonderland can't enter the 10 great paradises." I wasn't even a match for the fatty when he was rash, let alone Zhao Hao. With just a few words, he had been provoked. However, due to his identity and the current situation, he could not do anything in the end. He could only glare fiercely at the fatty, leave some harsh words, and leave the scene pathetically. Chapter 6:15. Since Wang Can had already informed me of Schwanda Wonderland's secret plan, I was already prepared for it. I wasn't surprised by Zhao Hao's provocation. I just said to his back, "Zhao Hao, no matter how much you've schemed, you'll still have to fight in the arena. With your Schwanda Wonderland's ranking, I'm afraid that you'll have to fight in the finals to meet Wanwu Wonderland. I hope that you'll be able to hold on until then." Zhao Hao's body stiffened. He turned around and looked at me gloomily. He said coldly, "I'm not sure if Schwanda Wonderland can hold on until then, but I'm afraid that Wanwu Wonderland won't have that chance." After saying that, he didn't wait for my reply and walked back to Schwanda Wonderland's seating area. Ah Fu squeezed through the crowd and watched as Zhao Hao disappeared into the crowd. He said earnestly, "Saint Mr. Lin, you didn't have to do this." I knew what Ah Fu was worried about. In his eyes, the only reason Zhao Hao held a grudge against me was because I was Officer Wang's helper. Once the Heavenly Grand Ritual was over and the Blessed Land's rankings were confirmed, there would be no conflict between me and Zhao Hao. There was no need for me to provoke him, and there was no need for me to embarrass him in front of the Blessed Land's Zhu clan. But what Fu didn't know was that because of the Xianyuan sword and Little Mo, in Zhao Hao's eyes, I was more hated than Wang Can or the leader of Wanwu Cave. Even if I wasn't a helper invited by Wang Can, he still wouldn't let me go. As for the fatty, he had always been fearless, so he naturally wouldn't care. I interrupted Ah Fu and smiled. "It's all right," I told him and brought him back to Wanwu Wonderland's seating area. It didn't take long for the third round to begin. The fatty, Ah Fu, and I walked towards the arena under everyone's gaze. Along the way, Ah Fu constantly reminded me and the fatty to be careful when facing the people from Schwanda Wonderland. No matter if it was the fatty or me, we didn't really care about the people from Schwanda Wonderland. I had the armor-removing sword to rely on. If it really didn't work, I had also nurtured the Xianyuan sword for a few days. Once I used it, I didn't believe that anyone in the same realm as me would be able to block it. The fatty was even more confident in his formation and didn't care about the people from Schwanda Wonderland. However, since the old man had good intentions, we couldn't say anything and could only agree to his request. When we walked up to the arena, the people from the 3 Emperors' Well Paradise were already waiting on the arena. Seeing our arrival, the oldest of the 3 took 2 steps forward to welcome us. Then, he cupped his fists and bowed to the 3 of us. "The 3 Emperors' Well's heavenly abode's concubine is fine. Greetings, fellow Taoists." The old man wore a bright yellow robe that was simple and unadorned. As he raised his hand, a formless deterrent force overflowed. Presumably, it was related to the cultivation technique he cultivated. I looked at the old man. Since he could speak on behalf of the 3 Emperors' Well Grotto Heaven and was so bold, he was most likely the person in charge of the 3 Emperors' Well Grotto Heaven. His gaze moved behind Ji Wubbing. Behind him, there were 2 figures, one fat and one skinny. I can't see through Ji Wubbing's cultivation, but I can see through their cultivation at a glance. The larger one is at the Great Circle of Sealing Heavenly Master, and the thinner one isn't bad either. His cultivation is similar to the fatty's, at the great circle of glorious knowledge. Although the two of them are wearing the same clothes as Ji Wubbing, they don't have the deterrent force of the old man. Instead, it's replaced by a sharpness that can't be hidden no matter what. They stand in place without moving, but they are like two treasured swords that have just been unsheathed, showing off their sharpness. Realizing that I'm observing them, the two of them didn't shrink back at all. They also looked at me with an extremely provocative look in their eyes. I smiled and didn't say anything. At this moment, Ji Wubbing bowed again. Compared to the previous time, he buried his body even deeper, and his tone didn't have any complaint. He still said respectfully, "The three emperors' Well's heavenly abode's concubine is concubine heavenly abode. Please advise me, fellow Taoist of Wangu Grotto Heaven. Among the three of us, although Ah Fu's cultivation is the highest, he's a servant of Wangu Grotto Heaven and can't represent Wangu Grotto Heaven. The fatty is only here to help, so he can't represent Wangu Grotto Heaven. Looking around, it seems that I'm the only one who can represent Wangu Grotto Heaven and speak to Ji Wubbing." After cupping my hands to return Ji Wubbing's greeting, I said in a clear voice, "This junior is Zhou Yi. Please enlighten me, senior and the three emperors' Well's heavenly abode." After receiving my response, Ji Wubbing straightened his body and said to me, "Mr. Zhou has such a cultivation at such a young age. Your talent is truly extraordinary. Although this all-heaven grand competition involves the distribution of cultivation resources, it is still a competition in the end. I ask Mr. Zhou and fellow Taoists to be lenient and not overdo it." I smiled and nodded in agreement. Only then did the old man bring the other two up the stage. Looking at the old man's back, I felt that it was even more strange. Although my conversation with him was short, adding up to only 5 sentences, the respect and etiquette in his words and actions couldn't be concealed. I couldn't understand why a person like him would ally with Schwanda Grotto Heaven and that despicable Zhao Hao. Could it be because of the division of the true dragon vein? That shouldn't be the case. If it was because of the division of the true dragon vein, then what did Ji Wubbing's words mean? Was he purposely letting our guard down? I didn't know why, but I felt that there must be some other problem behind the alliance with Schwanda Grotto Heaven. I suppressed the thought of getting to the bottom of this. It wasn't the time to think about this. Let's fight first. As I thought about it, I prepared to walk up the stage. Ah Fu pulled me back and said, "Sage, although Ji Wubbing has a complete Yang God cultivation, Ah Fu guarantees that he will definitely be able to defeat him. You and Mr. Lin only need to win 1 round. There's no need to risk your life against those people from Schwanda Grotto Heaven. It's more important to ensure your own safety." He had clearly seen the difference in cultivation between me and the fatty from Schwanda Grotto Heaven. He was worried that I would try to show off. My heart warmed and I said to Ah Fu, "Don't worry. Although there's a difference in cultivation between us, cultivation isn't the only thing that matters in a battle. He's still not my match." Ah Fu looked at my confident expression and relaxed a little. Afterwards, I instructed the fatty, implicitly telling him that with Ah Fu and I present, victory was already in the bag. If he felt that he wasn't a match for the opponent, he could just admit defeat. However, the fatty wasn't happy. He promised me, "Third baby, don't worry. If Zhao Hao sneak attacks you, I'll definitely help you beat up the people from Schwanda Grotto Heaven. Not only for this round, but also for the next round." After saying that, he didn't wait for me to reply and hurriedly jumped up the stage. Just like how Ah Fu was worried about me, I was also worried about the fatty's safety. It was his first time using so many talismans. If he didn't distinguish their effects on the stage, it was possible that he wouldn't be able to use them. It didn't matter if he lost, but if he got injured, it would be troublesome. I looked at the fatty's back and thought to myself, I have to end the next battle quickly. That way, if Ah Fu can also win quickly, the result will be set after 2 victories. There won't be any pressure on the fatty's side, and he naturally wouldn't be in any danger. I walked up the stage. The fatty from Schwanda Grotto Heaven was already prepared. He sneered and said to me, "I'm Zhao Han. Please." Zhao Han? What's his relationship with Zhao Hao? I smiled. Before I could say anything, Zhao Han continued, "Zhao Hao is my cousin. He said that you're very strong and told me to be careful when I fight you. I want to see just how strong you are." So they're cousins. No wonder they have such an annoying aura on them. I planned to end the battle quickly, so I didn't continue talking. I placed my right hand on my dantian and circulated the Dao Qi in my body to activate the Celestial Master Seal. I was prepared to give Zhao Han a head-on attack. However, I didn't think that Zhao Han would be even more anxious than me. He opened his mouth and spat out a black light. With a wave of his right hand, he brought the black light towards me. This was a technique passed down in Schwanda Grotto Heaven. They would swallow a treasure sword into their body and use Dao Qi to refine it. After a few years, they would be able to form a Dao sword that was connected to their mind and could be used freely. Coupled with different sword techniques, this was their strongest attack. It was rumored that when this sword technique was cultivated to the highest realm, they could even take someone's head from 1,000 miles away with their flying sword. I didn't know how reliable the rumors were, but I was sure that no matter if it was Zhao Hao from before or Zhao Han, they didn't have such abilities. Zhao Han carried the black light as he madly rushed forward. True essence gushed out from his body, lingering around him without dissipating. It was like a heavy dark cloud in the sky, and within it, there was even the majestic sound of thunder. It looked very terrifying. However, this wasn't the most terrifying part. The most unbelievable part of Zhao Han's body was the black light that he had spat out. When I first saw it, the black light was only an inch long, like a thumbtack. However, now, it was more than 3 feet long, and it gradually revealed the shape of a sword. However, this wasn't the end. Under Zhao Han's footsteps, the black light that had transformed into a black treasure sword continued to grow. It only stopped growing when it was the same size as his body. At that moment, with the strength of Zhao Han's arm, it was no longer enough to hold the huge treasure sword in his hand. He flipped his right hand and threw the sword behind him. Then, he held the sword hilt and rushed towards me. I didn't think that the simple and clumsy treasure sword didn't slow down Zhao Han's footstep. Instead, it increased his speed. This change seemed very slow, but in reality, in 3 to 5 breaths, Zhao Han and his huge treasure sword had shortened the distance between us to less than 5 meters. In the next second, he would appear in front of me. I held my breath and took a step forward with my right foot. Then, I took 8 consecutive steps without any pause in between. I used the Heavenly Spirit 9 steps in one go and the true essence in my body surged. I controlled the Heavenly Master Seal to attack Zhao Han. At the same time, I chanted a mantra. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.